Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 360. I had planned on doing like this little spinny thing here in the seat, but I realized that my knees hit the wall behind me to commemorate the 360, so you're just gonna have to deal with this. I'm Shane Satterfield, your host for the next couple hours of awesome video game discussion. Alongside me to do that, of course, is Matthew Kyle. What's up, Matt?
Oh, some Liberty, some Phantoms.
Yeah, we're gonna talk today about Cyberpunk.
Elbas, some Idrises.
Yeah, we've both been playing Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. We're going to talk about that today. Also, sadly, Matt, we're going to miss Assassin's Creed Mirage by one day. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow is the review embargo for Assassin's Creed Mirage, and I have it, but the timing of the show didn't work out, so unfortunately we're going to have to wait until next week's episode to talk about the game. But look for it on Sifted.net tomorrow. We'll curate all the reviews as we always do for all the big games, so look out for that. I'll say this, I did not get the review code for that as early as I had anticipated. That's all I'm going to say. I thought it might come a little earlier than it did.
Even in the review groups, I haven't seen anybody talking about it, which is unusual.
Yeah, usually I get Assassin's Creed review code a couple weeks before the game comes out. Now, granted, usually Assassin's Creed games are huge, and they've already said this one's smaller, so maybe they're counting on it not taking as long to get through.
It's supposedly only about 20 hours to do everything.
Yep.
Which is about old Assassin's Creed style.
I'm excited for it. Hope you guys are too. It comes out technically on Friday. Is that correct? The 5th is Friday?
I thought the 5th was Thursday.
Is it?
Yeah.
It is scheduled for the 5th.
Today's the 3rd.
Yes. 3rd, yeah.
Friday,
yeah, you're right. That's
Thursday
weird.
night.
That's so weird for Thursday to be a release date for a big game like that. But anyway, we'll have to wait until next week's episode for us to discuss that. And obviously, as we've been talking about for the last 3 months, October is here, and it is an insane month. If you haven't watched Dossier yet, which is our rundown of all the big games coming each month, if you are not a patron, that will be up on our YouTube channel. Maybe tonight, probably tomorrow morning, but our patrons have already watched that, obviously, and have seen that there's 15 games worth buying in October. So this is going to be probably the best month of the year for GameFace, I would argue. As far as the games that are in the show, this one's starting a little slow because we're still playing the games from last month, but once we get into October, all bets are off. It's going to be an awesome, awesome month for video games. How has your week been other than Cyberpunk, Matt?
That's all right.
Yeah?
Not a lot. I'm not going to remember what I was doing. We did our last film festival with both short films from a few years ago in it. Tarzana.
I saw some photos of that on Facebook. How'd that go?
It was fine. It was the last...
Where's Tarzana?
It doesn't matter because the theater was in Sherman Oaks.
Oh. Then why did they market it as Tarzana?
Because they're sponsored by the Edgar Rice Burroughs Foundation, so there's a bunch of Tarzan stuff in it.
Gotcha. How did it go?
Oh, it was fine.
Yeah. Were there a good crowd there?
Pretty good crowd. It was more like it's an interesting festival because it is by a guy who kind of also just wants to hang out with his famous friends. So there was some people there to meet that like the boom operator from Twin Peaks was there.
Oddly enough.
Bruce Boxleitner was there the last night.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people. There was some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all right. The one block that Cabaseo was in was a little odd in places. There was a Mandalorian fan film trailer in it that was audibly confused the audience.
That seems a little strange.
It was an unusual block,
yeah.
I'll tell you that much.
And then you had your dancing short in there.
It was all musical-related stuff, I guess, in a way.
Except for that trailer, I guess?
Well, except it was all set to music. So it was like a music video in a way. I don't know. It's very hard. And then I looked it up, and it turned out that half the footage was from another trailer for that same Mandalorian fan group from 7 years ago. And I'm like, I don't know what.
Wait, is the Mandalorian 7 years old now?
No, they're Mandalorian fans have been around since 1980.
Oh, so they created before the show even launched.
Oh,
is
yeah.
what you're saying. Got it.
These are people that just dress up as Mandalorians in armor.
Oh, okay.
That's existed since Boba Fett first appeared.
Yeah, Boba Fett has always been this huge character in the Star Wars universe, despite the fact that he hardly even appeared in the films. How much was the total runtime across all the films? Probably 3 minutes, maybe.
Less than that.
Yeah.
Probably. He only has 5 lines.
Ever.
I mean, he shows up. He follows Han Solo, stands around and complains a couple times to Darth Vader.
He's at the pit.
Misses shooting at Luke, and then flies away.
Right.
And then in Return of the Jedi, he stands around decides to rocket pack to close the gap between himself and a melee fighter for some reason. He gets hit in the back by a blind man and dies screaming in a pit.
Yeah,
that's Boba Fett. Boba Fett does nothing. It is kind of funny. Boba Fett was popular because his armor design is cool, and he was the first figure you could get from Empire Strikes Back through a mail-away offer. That's it.
He was also kind of quiet. Like, you never got to see his face.
He's supposed to be like a gunslinger, sort of like that, but he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, and actually, they continue that to this day. Like, Boba Fett, if you really pay attention to like even pre-Disney stuff, he sucks.
Yeah.
Like, outside of like the comics and the books that try to make him a badass.
Right.
Like in the actual stuff, like George Lucas and
he's a buffoon.
He's a kid. He doesn't succeed at what he's trying to do in the Clone Wars series.
Yeah.
In the Book of Boba Fett, he needs all this help to do even basic stuff. In Star Tours, he chases you. If you get the Geonosis ending, he chases you and gets blown up by his own sonic mind.
Oh, right.
Like, he doesn't...
Overrated.
Boba Fett is an idiot. Din Djarin in The Mandalorian is the cool-ass Mandalorian that everybody thinks Boba Fett is.
Yeah.
But isn't.
You're right. Yeah, that's a good point. So anyway, my week's been just basically playing games, just trying to figure out how I'm going to wrap my head around October and get everything done, trying to schedule things out a little bit in anticipation of all the games we're going to have to play and try to talk about here on GameFace. It's going to be an awesome month for you guys. I think it's going to ultimately be awesome for us, too. I'd rather have too many awesome games to play than not enough. I guess I'll put it to you that way. So anyway, October is about ready to roll. Obviously, we're getting here a little bit early before things really get rolling. The first week of October is a little slow, and then after that, it's just hold on to your wallets. It's going to be an awesome month. Again, I highly recommend that you check out Dossier. If you're a patron, it's live right now. If you're not, it will be on our YouTube channel for free for everybody else here in the next day-ish. So keep an eye out for that. We do have a ton of housekeeping in this week's episode, not as much with the games, but we do have 3, I think, awesome games to talk about later on in the show. But the housekeeping is pretty intense, but before we do that, we're going to check you guys out and see what you guys are saying on this awesome Tuesday. And thank everybody who hooked us up with Twitch Prime, because that's very, very important to us. People are already starting to talk about what they're going to play in October. Let's see. Eric Carmen's playing Pokemon Violet. Also, he's playing that new DLC, which seems to be getting pretty good reviews, other than the fact that the game still runs like ass.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not going to change.
That's not going to change. Cinetike says, I'm still on Baldur's Gate 3 and Dune Spice Wars. Interesting. I have not checked that out yet. Not sure how good that or bad that is.
That hit 1.0, I think, 3 weeks ago.
Oh, gotcha.
It's been early access
fawning over Luna today, of course, as usual. Toon Medic, I finally get to catch you guys live. You guys are awesome. Thank you, Toon Medic. We really appreciate it. Good to see that you're able to make it in for the show live. I know everybody has jobs, and sometimes that's not possible. But thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime while you're here in person. That's awesome. Shore F says, man, I know this is a gaming podcast, but as a dev, these past few months have been a crap show in the gaming industry. Yep, and we're about to get to a bunch of that stuff in our housekeeping section of today's show. There's a lot going on in the industry right now, and
for all the high level games coming out this year, you wouldn't know it if you're working on them.
No, you're right. It feels like they're not valued. The people who are making these games,
they're not.
Yeah, you just sense like you're just ranking.
There's a reason it feels that way because they aren't.
Yeah. MK Ness, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime. That's awesome, man. Hope you're doing good. Are you sure he died in the Sarlacc? Eric is asking.
I mean, yes. Like, they can do all the fan fiction they want with an official stamp on it, but he died in this. Yeah. I mean, you've seen Book of Boba Fett. Did you think that was worth dragging him out of the Sarlacc for?
Yeah.
The guys on the Vespas with the slowest car chase in the history of the television?
Yep. And then Eric says, I think the DLC runs worse, the Pokemon DLC. That's saying something, man. Contano says, it's the Luna show featuring Matt and Shane. Fair enough. It's Luna's world. We're just living in it. And it looks like, there's a lot of you should be ready for Twitch Prime. It's the turnover of the month. Usually we get a bunch of those, but maybe later on some people will show up and they'll give them to us. But anyway, looks like a pretty mellow day for you guys in the chat. But it's not going to be a mellow day for us. On GameFace, we have tons of awesome stuff to get to, and we should just get cracking on it. Let's kick off our housekeeping. We're going to start off with the first details on Far Cry 7. Matt, both you and I were disappointed in Far Cry 6, and in fact, it was probably the least played Far Cry for me personally, maybe ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first one I haven't finished since...
For me, maybe ever.
Yeah, it's actually the first one I haven't finished.
Yeah, I finish them all. Like, I get hooked on them, and I just go until I get them done. And that game, I don't know, I got maybe 12 hours into it and just totally lost interest in it. I'm not 100% sure why.
I think it was just the same thing over and over again in a way that, you know, it didn't even have a new idea to it. And I don't know, like, it wasn't anything particularly compelling about the narrative. Like, there wasn't much compelling about Five's narrative either.
No.
But there was always a hope that they were going to do something interesting with it, and it just never happened.
I mean, the big story was him.
Yeah.
It's like an actor's in it. That was like really the big story for Far Cry 6. Like, a popular actor is one of the lead roles, plays the bad guy.
But it's the same thing as all the bad guys since 3. It was like, okay, he's a really interesting character, but he shows up like 3 times. Like, he doesn't play a role in anything. Other than
rearing his son, who really was kind of the antagonist, really, in the game.
But he's also sort of like, is he going to, you know, the question is like, who gets the kid's soul, basically.
Right. Yeah.
But it's like Voss with the whole, it's like, okay, like he has a good scene, but then they kill him and
people forget that Voss was hardly in that game.
And what's his name? Pagan Min, barely in the game.
Yeah.
Even the family in 5, barely in the game.
Yeah, you're right.
Although I will give 6 credit where they finally backed off a little bit of the constant hallucinatory drug scenes.
Yep.
Where it's just like, yeah, okay, another dream sequence.
I don't know whether this is real or fake.
Oh, what could it be? And the 5 had that mandatory. You're constantly being kidnapped. Yeah. After everything.
Yeah,
it was like,
right.
Stop. Like.
Certainly Mexican. Thank you for Twitch Prime. Thanks for getting in there a little
They're
late.
Good games, but it's just like, I don't know. Like it feels like there's some areas where they still haven't topped 2. 2 had a more believable open world in some way. You were being hunted by the bounty hunters, and that felt good. They've never had fire spreading as good as 2. Like 2, if somebody accidentally blew off something flammable, like the whole firefight turned into a conflagration. I mean, it changed the whole fight.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, everything was burned down and trees were falling over. I mean, it was that felt like some big stuff happened, and like it just
kind of disappeared.
They never brought that back again.
Which is bizarre.
Really, if you go back now, put some visual mods on Far Cry 2 and put in the mod that makes it so security checkpoints don't respawn every 5 seconds. That game's still great.
Probably at this point worth being remastered.
I would say so. I think if you want, like, I think if they need some interim here after Far Cry Pandora, I think a tweaked version of Far Cry 2 would be a really good idea.
Yep. Well, website Insider Gaming, and here on GameFace we always attribute the people who are breaking the stories. Insider Gaming is reporting that Far Cry 7, first of all, is coming in fall of 2025, and the whole concept behind the game is that you have 72 hours of in-game time to rescue your rich kidnapped family from a conspiracy group called the Sons of Truth. Again, Insider Gaming is reporting that it'll feature a non-linear story that plays out over, and again, must be completed with 72 in-game hours that equates to about 24 hours of real time, which is about right. I mean, I play a game for 24 hours. I'm typically pretty good. So it's kind of like Pikmin style, though, this game, where you have like X amount of time to finish the objective. People hated that in the first Pikmin.
Not a fan of that.
Yeah,
I have a feeling that will not survive focus testing.
You think so?
Yeah.
Insider Gaming also says that the timer will stop within certain locations like safe houses. And they said one of the main objectives of the game is to track down and rescue all your family members. And if you want to 100% the game and get like all the trophies, all the achievements, you're going to have to rescue all of them. But the game is completely non-linear, so you can rescue them in what order you want to, or whatever order that you see fit. There's also new enemy interrogation mechanics where enemies can lie, they can refuse to cooperate, or even escape. And you have to track them down if they escape. And yeah, again, it's a non-linear story, which, let's be honest, like, even though Far Cry has typically been an open world game, the story has been pretty linear throughout the series history. So that's a pretty big departure. And in fact, just the concept for the game is a pretty big departure.
I mean, they've done that before, where like in 5 you could choose which family member to attack each. It basically branched after the beginning. It branched into 3 different directions. You could choose which one to do first, and then it came back together as the final thing. I don't expect much more than that.
Okay.
On this, I mean, this sounds again like Ubisoft doing. They're like, there's all these things you're going to be able to say. Yeah, but I'm really just going to do the same thing I've done 6 times already, right? Like, because I've seen the trailer for Breakpoint.
Yeah. Well, you also think like the rescuing the family members probably just means going to some crazy outpost, killing everybody, and then going into their final room and
then leaving, and now they're at their safe house.
Right. Yeah.
And they're mysteriously at every safe house.
Right. Yeah. Everyone you go to, they just somehow make it there. But at least the time doesn't tick off while you're at the safe house, Matt.
But like, so does time pass when you fast travel?
I don't know.
Is there no fast travel? Like what?
I'm sure there will be.
They're clearly going to like mess with. Like I don't believe for 1 second that timer is going to be some kind of hard limit.
No.
Like there'll be ways to extend
to
it,
fudge it or
remove it. Or whatever, like hell, it just is an accessibility option.
It might be an accessibility option, actually.
Disable that, I think.
Yeah,
like,
it might be that's the case.
That feels like a really lame way of trying to like address the whole idea that these games like drag on forever. It's like they don't drag on forever because there's no time limit on the main story. They drag on forever because it's just you're doing the same thing 40 times.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think a lot of these open world games would do better to make them shorter and get rid of the repetition. But we've been screaming up that tree for a while here on GameFace. I mean, generally, I would say though, I think this is a huge improvement for Far Cry, Matt, because again, the last one, I really had felt like I had burned out on the formula. I had finally and again, there are young people every day who are just turning of age to play M-rated games, who haven't played 20 Far Cries. You have to keep that in mind. Not everyone is like us, who have played everyone from the beginning. But still, I think even for those people, they've played a couple Far Cries at this point, and based on the sales of Far Cry 6, I think they're getting sick of it too, Matt. So I think ultimately this is probably a really good decision for the future of the franchise. Now the question becomes, will they be able to keep it up and keep the game innovative and fresh with each new entry, or will they go right back to the old formula after this one if it doesn't sell better than the last one? Although that's not exactly a tall order with how poorly Far Cry 6 sold. So it does appear, Matt, that Ubisoft is aware that people are burning out on the Far Cry formula and at least is trying something new. But to your point, a lot of times Ubisoft, like we find out stuff about like this about Ubisoft's games, and then you play the games and they're not as different as advertised.
No.
So we might want to keep our fingers crossed on this one. But I do think it's encouraging at least.
I think the biggest thing they can do with this series is not mess with that kind of part of the formula. You need to take it to more interesting places.
You think that's the X factor?
Yeah, like I think the Avatar thing is a step in the right direction, and Alien Planet or so. Like go nuts with like the things that are DLC expansions should be the games at this point. Like you've done weird, horrible people in a remote location shooting each other for 40 hours. A number of times.
Yeah, we get it.
Maybe do something a little offbeat. Maybe do, like go crazy. Like maybe Blood Dragon should be what you're looking at as sort of a template more than like, we need a timer.
Yeah.
Like that's not interesting to me. That's almost a guarantee I'm not going to play it unless there's a way to disable that.
Yeah.
I hate timers in games.
I generally do too. It does. I mean, it's successful at ratcheting up the tension, but it also ratchets up the annoyance sometimes. Yeah. It's a fine line to walk.
Like a long timer like that, it's either going to be so tight that you've wasted your time and it's going to be really irritating, or it's going to be so generous and long that there's no way to lose and it won't matter. So what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to make that good.
No, you're probably right.
It's either going to be irrelevant or it's going to be infuriating.
Yeah.
Like, there's no middle road there. Like,
I also struggle, too. It's like, how would you... We were talking about having it as an accessibility option earlier. I really don't know how they do that.
Yeah.
Because we'd have to create cinematics for each variation of whether you have it turned on or you don't. Because
if you don't have it turned on, everybody just acts like there's a timer in it, just like every other video game.
Yeah.
How many times does that happen? Yeah, but in Cyberpunk, it's like, you got to do this tonight. Like, tonight. I met that guy 4 weeks later. Like, are you talking about? I was out there doing bullshit in the world for however long, and you get there, it's like, hope you didn't wait too long. I hope you didn't wait too long. That was a month ago, dude. Like
you said we needed to do it tonight. You're right. I mean, they generally fudge it, but it's like if you have cinematics where the bad guys are saying, you have 48 hours to blah, blah, blah. You have 10 hours left. The clock is ticking. Like, if that's part of the narrative in the game, it's hard to get rid of that stuff and put something else in or just ignore it for people who don't want it.
Yeah, you just ignore it. Doesn't matter.
I guess.
It's just dramatic license.
I guess.
Just like any other game that does stuff like that. It happens all the time, and like nobody cares.
Yeah. I am excited to hear that they're trying something new with the franchise because I am a fan of it, and the last one, I couldn't believe how little I played it, how little draw I had to play more. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully...
I think I'm about halfway through the 6.
Yeah.
There's just a point where... Also, like, none of the stuff that they went on and on about mattered. Like,
you're right.
The outside in the country is so different from in the city. No, it's not. Like, you got to be careful in the city. No, you don't. Mm-hmm. Like, it's all the same shit.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah.
Like, it's all the same thing. Like, you can you gotta improvise all these weapons. It's just an upgrade system. Like every other game has an upgrade system. Like,
except you use nails to
it's just
build
it's a different. Instead of 40 beaver skins, I'm using like 5 hammers or something.
Yeah.
It's like, who cares? Like,
yeah, it's true.
It was a lateral move at best. And getting Giancarlo Esposito's a good get. He's like, he's good in the role, but like, that's Far Cry.
Yep, there it is.
It's just like, okay, whatever.
There's been a bunch of crazy clips in this bureau if you've been watching it. There's been all kinds of... There's been some cool stuff, too. There was one time where I hit a barrel with my car. The barrel went flying like 300 yards ahead, landed perfectly in a patch of fire, and then exploded. I mean, that is kind of what's cool about Far Cry, right?
Oh, yeah. And
those X factors, those things that just happen.
Like a lot of Far Cry hinges on like where is it set?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what's the time period.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would go either completely insane with it, like you're on Mars or something, like the DLC that they did, where it's like so you're on another planet. They're all kind of doing that with Pandora.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause that's really what it is. It's just Far Cry Avatar.
Yeah, it's Avatar Cry.
Yeah,
but like it's
Avacry.
But it's like what I don't know. Like the other thing you could do, I guess, would be to like really lean in on something interesting or historical, like but like you'd lose some of the wackiness. Like I would, I think Far Cry's base formula would translate pretty well to like a French Resistance game.
Yeah,
but it's a lot harder to have like wacky drug missions when you're fighting Nazis, especially these days.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that story summation makes me assume that it's going to take place in the United States.
It very well might. What's the conspiracy group called? The Sons of Truth?
Yeah, it feels...
That sounds like very apropos.
It feels very 2023 America there.
It does, yep. So anyway,
But again, will they have any balls to put some teeth on that?
Probably not.
I thought Far Cry 5 had the chance to address some of that stuff, and it just chickened completely out.
It really did. Yeah, and my guess is they'll do the same thing here. But I'm still excited to hear that they're at least trying something new with the franchise. It needs to have a new twist, a new wrinkle or whatever. And like you, I am also pretty excited for Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, because I think it might be the template that I really enjoy in a new setting that will make it better or make it at least more interesting. So anyway, there you go. That's Far Cry 7. My guess is the game isn't going to come probably, I mean, they're saying fall 2025. That probably makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they're going to fish up Avatar. It's about done right now. And then they got to get cracking. And that gives you 2 years. They've probably already done pre-production with a small team.
Theoretically slipped to like February 2026.
Maybe for the next, stay in the same fiscal, but into the next year. Yeah. So we'll see, but as of right now, again, according to Insider Gaming, Far Cry 7 coming in fall of 2025 with all the tweaks that we just talked about. Next up, we're going to talk about PlayStation CEO Paul Ryan leaving PlayStation. He's retiring in February of 2024. He cited the reason for stepping down was that he lives in Europe but has to work in the United States and that commute is killing him. I could totally understand that. Yeah. I mean, that would make me want to quit my job. Like having to fly constantly, and not even just flying to America. It's not like he's flying the 7 hours from Europe to New York or to Philly or even to Miami or whatever. He has to fly all the way across the United States, all the way to California. I mean, that's like a 13-hour flight each way.
What in the world is happening here that he has to be here in person for that all the time?
Especially with Zoom and all that. Yeah. But look, it's a Japanese company, Matt, and they do things differently. Their expectations are different, and my guess is that's part of what's tied into his decision making.
Yeah, make your money, step away. Yeah, sure.
He's been there 30 years.
Yeah, you put your time in.
My guess is he's worth $10 million or more at this point, working at Sony as a C-level exec all that time, getting stock options, all the stuff that you get once you reach that level in your career. He's good to go money-wise, and it's actually kind of interesting because if you watch any interviews with him where he's more candid from the last couple of years, he talks about it every time. Every time he talks about, well, I live here, my family's here, but I'm constantly having to fly to America and blah, blah, blah. He's like, where's Zhao? Like, we kind of saw this coming. Pachter saw it coming, by the way. Pachter predicted he was going to retire back in May. He went on a whole thing about it. I'm sitting there, I'm like, why would he do that? While we were recording it, I actually paused it and I was like, come on, dude, think seriously about this. He's only been on the job for like 3 years. Like, he's worked his whole career in Sony for this job. He finally got it. Why would he quit after 3 years? He's like, I'm telling you.
Because 3 years is how long it takes those stock options to mature.
You're right. He's like, I'm telling you, he's like 65. He's been there for like almost 30 years. Like, he's made his money. He has no reason to stay. Like, he launched PS5. He launched PlayStation VR 2. That's pretty much it for the next like 4 or 5 years. He's like, why wouldn't he? And then I'm like, okay, all right, you convinced me. And then we finished recording the episode. And as it turns out, once again, he was right. And it's so sad how he gets one little thing wrong. The whole internet piles on him. He gets stuff like this all the time, but people have just like tuned him out and don't watch him anymore. I don't know, but it's a shame that we tweeted it out, that he had predicted it back. No one cares. They only care when he's wrong. It's so sad the way the internet is. But anyway,
Zed Saber Juno asked what was stopping him from simply living in the U.S. Your family's over there. Also, maybe he didn't want to live somewhere where you're one medical crisis away from financial ruin. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Europe,
not for him. He's rich enough that he can absorb it. But
you never know.
That's true. You get cancer,
depending on how much equity is tied up in real estate or whatever.
Very quickly if you have cancer. So, anyway, what do you think the fallout of this is? They've already said that they're appointing someone as an interim. I think someone from Sony Japan is going to stand in temporarily. What do you think they need in their next leader, Matt?
I don't know.
Really?
Like, they're doing fine. Like, stay the course, I guess.
I mean, they've had one big first-party game this year.
Yeah, but they're still in the lead by... They're uncatchable.
Yeah. Do you find it a little disturbing or maybe upsetting that I mean, in my opinion, it feels like Sony's mismanaged this generation, and yet it still has a license to just win?
Well,
not that Xbox was that much better.
Everybody mismanaged this generation. They launched too early.
Yeah.
Nintendo's irrelevant because they're playing their own game. They both launched too early. Like Sony didn't have a schedule or plan in place. They had to keep everything cross generation for 3 years. Xbox hasn't gotten their newly acquired devs up and running until now. I mean, Starfield is probably the beginning of that. But we'll see if we get, the other, Hellblade 2 is reportedly pretty much done. We'll see if that shows up early next year.
It looks like the tide's turning for Xbox.
Yeah, but
sure.
like we are hitting a point where if they had launched last year, I think we'd all feel a little better right now. Mm-hmm. But it was just like, it all hit at the same time. They both mismanaged it. But because of that mismanagement, it doesn't really matter. And then what does matter is the fact that Sony had a stronger library compared to the main competition, and that's all that counts. Like, they don't need to have a stronger lineup this year because Xbox doesn't either. Like, who are they against? They're competing with themselves at this point.
Yeah. I mean, Xbox has had a better release calendar this year than PlayStation has.
Yeah, but most people don't know that.
Yeah.
Like, they're so far behind, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Does
it make you wonder what
that could change the next generation, but probably not.
Does it make you question just how important, exclusives really are?
I mean, they're important to Sony.
But are they? Because they only had one really this year, or they're going to have one.
I mean, they're going
to
win awards for Last of Us, and that's their exclusive. That's because they own that.
Right. Wait. I mean, the Last of Us game was released years ago.
The show.
Oh, the show. You think they care about that?
100%.
Really?
100%. 104,000%. Absolutely.
Really?
Prestige in that regard? Absolutely. Because even just prestige over the fucking movies and TV division. Because remember, PlayStation formed their own production wing.
Yeah.
And the fact that their show is getting all this praise, while meanwhile everybody talks about how the only good thing Sony Pictures puts out is an animated Spider-Man movie series, I guarantee you there's some internal anger. And all the Sony corporate divisions hate each other. Like, everybody knows that. Like, I don't think anybody hated anyone more than all the rest of them hated the TV division. But it was, that's all right there. Like, you'd be shocked at how much mind share is taken up of that in Sony, apparently, which is bizarre to me that you wouldn't kind of at least try to have some kind of united front, but it just doesn't happen.
I just don't think it matters to the video game business.
Oh, 100% does.
Like, for instance, my aunt was just in town. She's 67 years old, and she brought up the Last of Us TV show to me. She's like, hey, I really like that Last of Us thing. I mean, it's totally breaking outside of the boundaries of gaming. I totally understand that, and it does make a difference for Sony corporate. But for our purposes, we're looking at like one big PlayStation exclusive for 2023, but it doesn't matter. It's like it hasn't hurt PlayStation
but also,
at all.
Do you know what the most common question I've gotten from people who were finally exposed to any of Sony's material through The Last of Us? How do I play that?
That's good to hear.
They're interested in playing that game, and I'm like, I don't know if you want to play it, but like it is working for them. Is anything else working for them? No. We saw the Uncharted movie, that didn't work out for them. But Uncharted is probably a dead franchise at this point.
It does feel that way. Yeah.
But that is going going forward is going to be more and more of an issue. And the fact that they own those properties is why they can do that. Hell, even Twisted Metal ended up getting pretty good reviews, which you never would have believed from that trailer. But like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. What I was getting at is that like his replacement to me needs, and it's not his fault that the first party release schedule didn't work out this year or whatever. It's partially his fault, but not primarily. But I do think his replacement needs to crack the whip, so to speak, a little more on the first party department to get them in line and get them scheduling stuff so you're getting at least like 3 exclusives a year. Like, I don't think that this is sustainable, I guess is what I'm getting at. I feel like if PlayStation keeps doing this where it's 1, maybe 2 big exclusives a year, I do think eventually you will see their lead start to slip and people will start gravitating towards Xbox because that's going to happen at the same time that Xbox is really starting to get things in gear.
Yeah,
like next year is going to be a great year for Xbox.
Yeah, I just don't think that's true at all. I think the console war shit is too strong, and I think people are too married to the brand.
So that's what I was getting at. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's just so many PlayStation fans that no matter how poorly they're treated, which, let's be honest, that's really what this is, they're going to keep coming back for more. And
it doesn't matter because even if you don't get a ton of exclusives, you can play literally every other game that's released on the system anyway, so who cares? Like,
again, what I was getting at is, like, first party doesn't seem to matter to PlayStation fans hardly at all.
I think it can certainly push you over the edge if you're like, deciding between the two. I mean, I think it's fairly rare. Most people think PlayStation, they think games at this point, right? Certainly Call of Duty, that's their lead platform, which is what half that fucking legal argument was about.
Yeah.
I just don't think I don't think it matters. Like I don't know what Xbox. I mean, obviously it's possible to wrest control away from PlayStation. Xbox
PlayStation did it from Nintendo.
And Xbox 360 did it
from PS3.
From PS2. Go back to the PS2 generation and try telling people, next generation, Xbox going to dominate this shit. And people are barely going to own PS3s because they're so overpriced and barely play anything properly.
But you know what people will follow that up with? Well, ultimately, PlayStation won.
Right. But after they got super cheap and became like basically emulation machines.
Like year 7, it won when nobody cared anymore. Yeah.
Right. But
you're right. It's possible. That's what I'm getting at here.
But it's do I believe current Xbox can do that? Not really.
I'll admit I've lost some faith.
Yeah. The opportunity is arguably there, but also they're gonna have to keep this. Like that new Fable's gonna have to be real fucking good. They have to deliver on all this stuff.
Yeah. Right now it's just all talk and numbers.
Yeah. And they're already kind of up against the wall on a couple of things where it's like I know they've started the messaging already, but they're somehow going to have to really get the word out that Avowed is not Starfield.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Avowed is not Oblivion.
Right.
And it's Outer Worlds fantasy, basically. Yeah. And they're going to have to really message that, or the whole narrative around that game is going to be like, I thought this was going to be a 400-hour open world game, and it's a 30-hour story. And it's just like, they really got to get ahead of all that stuff.
And I would agree with you that messaging is something that Microsoft's not great at.
Yeah.
Things that they can improve on too. So,
and I think the Xbox stuff is just not very attractive in the retail space right now.
Yeah.
In part because they're rectangles.
It is kind of interesting though that Starfield has done so well financially, despite being free on Game Pass. Like, it's still sold very, very well.
Yeah, clearly people are buying that game, even though they could just download. I mean, I did.
Yeah.
Like, I bought that fancy case and all that stuff. I mean, that's who I am. But I don't buy those anymore unless it's something I'm really interested in, and that was one of it.
Yep.
I still haven't even turned the watch on.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe at this point it's just better to just leave it.
Yeah, I might. I mean, the case is sure cool, like the way it opens, and it's nice to have. The fun thing about it is having an in-universe item. I think that's the cool thing about that one.
I agree.
It's better than a statue.
Yeah. So anyway, big transition coming up for PlayStation. It'll be interesting to see who they select. You think they're going to select someone from Japan or the West?
I think the West.
Yeah.
Just to keep the balance.
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
The market is way bigger. I think you want a leader who understands that market as well as possible. So I would agree. I think it's going to be someone from the West. I don't know who, though. Because before, we always kind of saw this person in the wings. Yeah. Like, we saw Andrew House for years and years before he became the CEO. And he didn't last very long either. It is funny how these people work at PlayStation for like 20 years. They finally get to the top of the mountain, and then they last for like 2 years. And they're like, get me out of here.
Well, I'm sure it's a terrible job.
It probably is. Thankless job.
Obviously, you're compensated. I mean, it's the thanking is the millions of dollars you make over the course of years with, capital gains. But like, imagine, you're running one of the biggest entertainment products in the world. You're trying to balance relations with all these different developers and publishers all over the place from all these different cultures and all these different countries. You're trying to keep your weirdo Japan Sony bosses happy, who, like, God knows what the hell that's about.
I don't want to know. What they ask them to do.
Because that they're still the home office. They're still in charge, and they're going to think of themselves in charge. And so even no matter how high-powered an executive you are in the West, you're still going to have to go back home to the home office in Tokyo and bow and scrape. It's like, I'm sure it's and then, like, I mean, with Paul, like, factor in having to, like, fly all the time, these 20-hour flights, or I was like, yeah, I can see why you only last 3 years doing that. Like, that's, hell, just go get another, CEO job. Who cares at that point? Like,
any generic,
go run
whatever.
Warner Brothers. You're going to at least make some money off that one,
And you have a better
You can do whatever the hell you want. Doesn't have to make any sense. Zaslav is just basically shooting things in the head. And you'd think he's going to go work at EA next.
Yeah, yep. So anyway, there you go. Paul Ryan leaving PlayStation. I'm guessing in the next month or two, we'll learn about his replacement. Probably. I also agree, probably from the West. Shohei Yoshida seemed like he was kind of in line for this job, but then he was demoted like a while ago.
Well, I don't even know if he'd want it, even
maybe
if he
not.
was.
Because he can probably see just how crappy a job it would be. But you get paid very, very well, so some people are willing to step up and do it. So we'll wait, and we'll find out who his replacement is. Shouldn't be too much longer to wait. Next up. Layoffs at Epic Games, Matt. Something I thought I would never hear coming out of my mouth, but Epic Games has laid off 16% of its total workforce. Almost 1,000 employees Epic has laid off. Now, caveat here is that it basically just dissolved two companies that it purchased, Bandcamp and Super Awesome. I'm not even sure what Super Awesome does. When it acquired Bandcamp, both of us were like, what? Like, why would Epic buy Bandcamp?
And it turned out they basically liquidated it and sold it to somebody else.
Right. And so we were right. We're like, there's no reason for them to buy it. So there's a couple bad acquisitions that they're kind of correcting
They
here.
also gutted Mediatonic.
They did, yep. Which is the studio that makes Fall Guys.
But then they sold to Epic, and I hope that was a small enough company that everybody got some equity, because, wow.
I mean, they all got, my guess is they got paid out well.
I hope so.
I would hope so,
That doesn't always happen.
You're right, especially for the rank and file employees.
Talk to Mojang about that.
Yeah, non-management. Yeah, It doesn't always get paid out in those instances. But you would think with Epic buying your company that your boss would negotiate something to make sure you get taken care of. Who knows? But you would hope anyway.
Yeah, that was...
So we're seeing some financial issues at Epic. What do you think is the root of these problems?
I think the root is that Tim Sweeney's an idiot.
You think so?
Yes.
You think he's another idiot billionaire?
They're all idiots.
It really does kind of seem that way.
Like, one of the most helpful things we could do in the modern age is to disabuse ourselves of the notion that if you are a billionaire, you are a billionaire because you're smart.
Or if you're just rich, you're smart.
Yeah, it's not because you're smart. It's because you were either lucky or ruthless. That's it. Yeah. They're lucky or sociopaths, like almost all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak with my experience working in corporate America that, like, the people that I knew who ended up going beyond, like, middle management, they were the assholes. They're the ones who didn't care about their workers. They're the ones who...
Well, also, remember, Tim Sweeney just a few months ago was making fun of other layoffs.
Right.
That Epic would never have layoffs.
That's true,
because
actually.
Epic stands strong through recessions, and now here we are.
Yeah.
And as it admitted, like, we focused too much on what we thought like Fortnite's revenues were going to be. It's like, who could have seen that coming? That was going to shift when you basically started actively attempting to fleece everybody all the time. Now everybody's shifted to basically doing more, basically leaning further into the free to play model, and they've lost some whales.
Yeah.
They have not diversified the business into anything else outside of the Unreal licensing, which is so generous that it doesn't really make them money over hand over fist like it used to.
We're seeing this right now, the Fortnite Unreal editor. That is, I believe, Epic's attempt at monetizing Fortnite in a different way and creating a new revenue stream. But
yeah, I just think they're overestimating how many people are willing to and or actually able to do stuff like this.
Yeah, to build things that people actually want to play.
Yeah.
It's like I go and check out like Roblox every once in a while with my nieces and nephews, and I'm like, why are you playing this? Like, they're just the worst games. And I think part of the charm for them is playing terrible games.
Yeah, there is an element of that.
I think my nieces and nephews are like, this game is goofy and stupid, and I want to play it, which is really bizarre. I don't think they play a lot of stuff in Roblox because they think it's excellent. It's like almost like, well, my friends at school, we're on a leaderboard, and we're all trying to get the high score. Like, that's what drives them to play Roblox, not the high quality of the content on Roblox.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that happens. You know, that happened to us, too. Like, you remember G4 was basically brought to its knees at one point by that Winnie the Pooh baseball game.
Right.
and that Nanaka Crash thing.
Yeah. The Abram brings up a good point. The Epic Game Store is a huge money sink, because it is. They're giving away like 3 free games a week to anybody who just wants to click on a link. You get it for free. Like, they're paying for each one of those games. It's the sad part is that what's happening is Epic is willing to lose billions of dollars giving away free games and isn't willing to keep people employed at his company. But
like now, more and more, you're sort of like, okay, like I saw that strategy. It's been years. What are you
not
doing?
Working. Either at this point, it's like, have you figured out it's not working? Like, I agree. I don't understand why it's continued to do this.
Like, there's got to be
still not winning.
There's got to be an end game in there somewhere, you'd think, but just doesn't seem not yet. Apparently,
doesn't seem. I don't know. I don't know
what's the idea to out Steam, because that doesn't seem to be happening.
It hasn't happened. You're not going to be able to pull people away from their gigantic libraries. I think Epic should have figured that out by now.
Meanwhile,
even with
Steam
all
just
these
did that
free
20th
games.
anniversary thing. It's like, yeah, people have 20 years wrapped up in that thing.
Yep. So
even I don't care that much. You know, if something I'm interested in, we'll go Epic Games exclusive. If I want to play it enough, I'll do that. But I'm not buying Assassin's Creed Mirage on Epic Games Store.
Yeah.
Because I have all the Assassin's Creeds on Steam.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to get it on like PlayStation,
where my collection is,
or Xbox, where my other collection. You know, because basically I did first run on Xbox. And then I would get them on Steam when they're like $5, you know, because inevitably the Ubisoft does big sales eventually with everything. So over the years, I have gotten, you know, all the Assassin's Creeds after the fact for cheap. But like, I'm not going to suddenly start it to go all over again on the Epic Games Store. I'm just going to get it on Xbox.
I don't care how many free games you give me a week. I'm still never going to catch up with my Steam library.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
I'm even kind of annoyed that getting it on Xbox doesn't get me Xbox Play Anywhere for that.
Well, you're right.
I can't even play it on PC
That's a good point.
Luckily, it's not pretty enough to really care about that.
I was obviously nervous when I heard about these layoffs, worried that our friends maybe had lost their jobs. A lot of our friends moved from here out to Raleigh, North Carolina to work there.
Let's be honest, if you get laid off from Epic, where else are you going to go in Raleigh?
Nowhere. You know? I mean, truth be told, they don't want to be there. So they want to. Most of them move there only because it's like, there aren't jobs for us anymore.
Well, some of them love it there.
They do now, but they didn't want to move there initially. Right. They're like, this is like kind of the last chance I have to get a job doing this stuff, and they were right. I mean, let's be honest.
Now it's like you can't come back to LA anymore because it's too expensive, and there's still no jobs like that here.
Yeah, you're right. So you're right. Maybe they would be stuck out there trying to find gigs, but it sounds like they're all okay. I don't think any of our friends lost.
I don't know anyone who got laid off.
I didn't see anything.
I do know some people got laid off from EA.
Oh, really? That we know?
I don't think you know them, but I know them.
Yeah. So anyway, it's funny. Like, you just think Epic is this company. It's like, why would it ever need to lay people off? And let's be honest, it really didn't.
It didn't.
That's the truth of the matter.
Go look at what Tim Sweeney got paid this year.
Yep.
And tell me that guy couldn't have just taken a hit and kept these people on.
Yeah, he totally could have. And figured out something to do with the business.
You remember when the Wii U bombed and Iwata took a half pay cut to make up for it?
That'll never happen here in the U.S.
There's not a lot of executives like Satoru Iwata people. Like, let's be honest.
I think we all know that.
I'm not a hero worship Nintendo executive person, but Iwata was a legitimately good dude.
He was who loved games. Yeah, who
loved games and loved his people.
Yeah.
Loved his employee. Like he knew what that should have been about.
Yep. So just another billionaire who needs to squeeze out a couple pennies is going to take it out of his employees' pockets, but. Not really a surprise, sadly. I think it may be a surprise for some people because some people just figured Fortnite, too big to fail, Epic, too big to fail with Unreal Engine and blah, blah, blah. It's not even about that, though. It's not about
if
failing.
you're going to keep eating costs on the Epic Game Store, why not keep eating costs keeping people employed?
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Yep. So anyway, again, big layoffs at Epic. Best of luck to all those who are affected. That's a lot of people, man. Especially for the Raleigh area. I mean, that's a huge hit to the workforce in that that's not even really a major city. It's more like a town, really.
It's a town that exists because of Epic. It's basically like Surrey was with
all the money
Bullfrog
in that
and
town
Lionhead
is coming from Epic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Luckily, Bullfrog and Lionhead were able to, were around long enough. They led to other developers popping up there. So now Surrey and Guildford are kind of a
development hub.
A development hub built by Peter Molyneux in the end. But like that hasn't happened in Raleigh yet outside of some very small satellite stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, God help you if you bought a house there and all of a sudden you're laid off from Epic. Like, well, I don't know what you're going to do. I mean, remote work, I guess. But it's a dire situation out there already. And like some of it's just nonsense. Like when Epic did their layoffs, I know it's his job and he has to, but the employment recruiter guy for EA was posting tweets about like, hey, come apply to EA. I'm like, you guys just laid a bunch of people off like 4 weeks ago. Like, it's not any better there. Like, what are you going to give them the jobs you just like fired people from? Like, what is that?
They might.
You could.
I mean, they might. That happens. So anyway, not great times if you're an Epic employee right now, but also it's not just Epic. Also, Sega is going through a rough patch here. It just announced that it has canceled the game Hyenas, which was under development by Creative Assembly. Now, Creative Assembly...
I forgot this existed.
I know a lot of people had, but they just did a beta like last month.
Yeah.
And this trailer just came out like 2 weeks ago that we're seeing right now. It just came out. And Sega has canceled the game. It's made by Creative Assembly, and we expressed concerns about this game because Creative Assembly typically just makes real-time strategy games, the Total War RTS games. That's their wheelhouse. And we had talked about, sometimes it works when you have a developer that's used to working on a genre and it tries something new. Sometimes that works out okay, sometimes it doesn't. It appears with this cooperative shooter, Hyenas, that has not worked out.
I think it's more that no one cares about this genre and you're throwing money in a hole by making anything in it, whether you're good at it or not.
Yeah.
Point.
The feedback on the beta was not good.
No.
That was another thing, too. Like, most of the people who played it were not happy with it.
But similarly, when was the last time anyone did a beta of a game like this and there was good feedback?
Yeah.
This little corner of the shooter market is so saturated, I do not understand why people are trying anything in that regard.
Because they're games as a service, and they think they can live on.
Yeah, but that trend is over. You're seeing basically the fumes of that trend, which is clearly over. I think this is more scummy because, like, when Sega was in that real dark, dry period, Creative Assembly basically put them on their backs and carried them through.
It really did.
Those Total War games were keeping them afloat.
They
for
really
a few
were.
years there.
Yeah.
And this is a real shitty way to repay a company. I mean, yeah, okay, shut Hyenas down, but let them move these people to other projects.
Yep.
Like,
they suffered layoffs. We should have mentioned that. They did. They suffered at Creative Assembly. They had to lay people off because of this.
Yeah, and that's just like, again, they're not your friends.
Yeah.
Like, there is
how many more times do Matt and I have to tell you this?
There is none of that. There is no like lifetime employee. There's no like, oh, I'm going to work for these guys for the rest of my. It doesn't exist. They will drop you like a number off a spreadsheet if for 1 second. You are never their friend. They are not there to help you.
Sometimes people can just lose their jobs over to create a narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million ways you can lose your job in corporate America that are at no fault of your own in a lot of ways. So this was canceled. Creative Assembly suffered some layoffs. Meanwhile, Creative Assembly's Total War Pharaoh comes out this month. It's coming out in a few weeks. To your point, it's money in the bank. Those RTS games, PC players love them. And it sells like 2 or 3 million copies every time. And they can get those games done in like a year and a half. It's really insane.
Their only real misfire has been Warhammer 3.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just
years and years and years.
Yeah,
like
they're
every
an
time.
RTS machine, and it's sad. Like, you like to see developers branch out and try new stuff, like they were trying with this, but it doesn't always work, unfortunately. And this was a case where it didn't. So
a lot of times, Creative Assembly's branched out. It hasn't worked out too. Remember that Spartan Total War, like
yeah, that's right,
action game spin-off thing they tried to do at one point. Oh, they did a Vikings open world game that was actually decent. I remember that.
I don't remember that one.
The Viking Battle for Asgard. No, was it Vikings Battle for Asgard?
It sounds like it could be.
It was yeah, sure. That's probably the title of something, right? No, that was pretty good. It doesn't work right on PC anymore, but it was. I played that like twice.
Oh wow,
that was a fun little open world game they made.
Well, the other thing about it too is that Relic, which is also under the Sega umbrella, also just had layoffs like a couple months ago. And now they're also saying that maybe the developer of Football Manager, which is Sports Interactive, might be taking some cuts. The Humankind developer, Amplitude Studios, let's not forget, Humankind did not do particularly well. They worked on that for a while. They may take some cuts, and they said Rovio could also see some cuts. So things are not great in Sega land right now.
Things are not great in game developer land. Like this is a terrible year to be a game developer, which really is weird because how much the game schedule is maybe the best of all time. And it's maybe the worst year of all time to work in the industry.
But you know why? Because all those projects are finishing. And when a project finishes, they almost always lay off a certain percentage
but also
of staff.
but like a lot of these layoffs have nothing to do with any of those big projects.
No, you're right. It's just their convenient excuse. I mean, that's just what studios do generally. So
it's like you go and watch and see if Insomniac lays off anyone from the Spider-Man team. Not going to happen.
Well, we do have some other layoffs to talk about here in a minute that I was kind of surprised by, so we'll see about that. Next story in housekeeping, MetaQuest 3. We finally got MetaQuest 3 fully unveiled this week. They had put out the debut trailer that didn't have a lot of tech facts and like the actual nuts and bolts of what was going to be in it. And really the thing that stuck out to me in this re-unveiling of MetaQuest 3 is that it's just as good at AR as it is VR. Like, I hadn't realized that this is kind of like Apple's headset, where it's a VR AR crossover, and the AR is actually great. If you can see, the whole focus of this new trailer is AR. It's not even really being in VR. But at the same time, we did finally get a ton of final details for it, like the release date. It's coming out October 10th, so in like a week. Prices begin at $500 for the 128 gigabyte model. The 512 gigabyte model costs $650.
That's a lot.
You're paying, yeah, that seems like a whole bunch. Although, really, the overprice to me
that's a PS3 right there.
Yeah, to me, the overprice really though is the 500 for their 128 gigabytes.
I mean, these are very overpriced machines.
They didn't used to be. Like, they used to be $300.
Yeah, they used to be the budget, but now
and that's why they were successful.
Right. Well, they're leaning more into I think they're leaning here more into the boutique experience to some degree. I think to some degree because of what the PSVR 2 did in terms of what they're presenting technologically. But also, like, they're betting real hard that the convergence of AR and VR in a convenient, like, just put it on and do it, as opposed to cords and another console. They're betting real hard that the wireless sort of convenience factor is what has made Quest successful and not the price.
It's both that's made it
It probably
successful.
is both, but they're betting that the convenience factor is the key thing. I do think the convenience factor is the key thing in terms of making whatever headset finally breaks out and becomes the critical mass VR AR thing. Yes, the fact you mean able to just grab it, put it on, go is exactly what needs to happen. However, $650 is a lot.
It's getting back to the price of like tethered VR.
Yeah,
it's come full circle. Now it's just as expensive as like Oculus Rift stuff.
And you're still stuck in the whole like, and I'm gonna play what on this?
Yeah,
like that's a lot of money just to play Beat Saber nicer.
Well, I think they're doing a better job with getting games lined up for this.
They are, but that doesn't mean they're doing a good job.
Yeah. One thing we should mention is that if you do buy either one of those versions, you do get what appears to be its best launch game for free, which is called Asgard's Wrath 2. They also showed a Quest version of this game called Lego Brick Tales that looked freaking amazing. Now, it's already been released in like another form in 2D. The VR version of Lego Brick Tales is like that demo that we saw of Minecraft for HoloLens. It's like you build stuff on a table, and then once you build it in AR, you can actually play it. And I think that might be a big hit. So they're doing, I think, a little bit better with software. But let me get to the specs here. So it has the Qualcomm Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2. The last Quest had the XR2 Gen 1. They're saying that it's like 40% more processing or whatever. I don't know how they come to those numbers because they're all pretty much fuzzy math. As I said, it's way more AR friendly than the first one, and more than I thought, just looking at the first trailer for it. It has 2 RGB color cameras that combine with a depth projector to deliver full color, high fidelity pass through, meaning like you just hit a button on it and you can see through it without having to take it off, which was a big thing that they talked about with the Apple headset. It's also a big thing in PlayStation VR 2, although I would argue it's not handled as well in that as it is in these other 2 devices.
No, although it's still functional. That is a big deal. Like being able to see what's around you without having to take the thing off is, again, not just because of convenience and various AR things, but because one of the key elements of this and getting it to be a thing that someone plays regularly is giving them ways to do what they need to do without having them take it off. Because once you take it off, there's the question of will they put it back on? Mm-hmm. And if you can let them do that without having to take the thing off, well, it's still on. I'm just going to go back to my thing. That is a very important. They all realize that at the same time, it seems, or maybe it just became financially feasible to put that tech in them all at the same time.
Yep.
But that is an important part of the convenience method too.
For sure. It has 10 times the resolution of Quest 2 and 2 times the resolution of Quest Pro in pass-through mode. So again, they're making pass-through mode a big deal because you have to have that in order to do augmented reality. It has 8 gigabytes of DRAM. It weighs 515 grams. How many pounds is that? How many pounds is that? 515 grams.
I want to say it's like 1.5 pounds.
I think it's more than that, isn't it?
What's it's like half a kilogram? Kilogram's what, like 3.5 pounds?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. It can't be that heavy, or otherwise it'll be annoying to use. Mm-hmm. It's 2064 by 2208 pixels per eye, which is a 30% increase over MetaQuest 2. It plays by default at 90 hertz, so 90 frames per second. They're saying that they're going to have an experimental mode for MetaQuest 3 that'll let you play at 120 frames. However,
Rock and Roll 458 says 1.13 pounds.
Okay. That sounds about right.
That's not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad. So it looks like it's 90 frames per second because most developers are going to develop to that spec. They're not going to develop to the 120 where maybe some people are using it, some people aren't.
Yeah, the 120 spec seems like something for more. I bet you could do Beat Saber at 120.
Maybe. Something really simple, I'm guessing. There's no eye tracking.
That's interesting.
That's a big deal because everything in VR now is all about eye tracking. And in fact, they want you to use your eyes, like PlayStation VR 2.
Yeah.
It's like use your eyes more than you use.
That's the biggest drawback for me is for $650 and you don't have the foveated rendering thing.
Yeah.
That's
a big deal.
What are you doing?
Yeah. It's hard to believe.
I'd rather have that than the AR stuff.
I'd agree. Yep. Also, it has 2.4 hours of battery life while playing most games. That seems okay.
Yeah, I'll be honest, when I play the VR stuff in the past, I have not opened my PlayStation VR 2 since you returned it to me.
Really?
But what was I going to play?
Yeah.
But when I do play it, I play for longer than that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I can't even make it more than 10 minutes. So
since I don't get sick, I play for 4 or 5 hours, especially because I have to move furniture to do it. So I'm going to really, I buckle down. I keep it out for a couple days and play a lot.
And then put it away again. And
put it away again, and then don't think about it until another game comes out, which has not been a problem because there aren't any.
Yeah, that's true. It's been pretty pathetic.
Talk about a lineup to beat the PSVR 2. Your lineup needs to be one game at this point.
Yep. And then they have new controllers called Touch Plus controllers, and there's no ring around them. Mm-hmm. You just hold them, and there's not that weird, almost brass knuckles thing that a lot of VR controllers have.
Right.
And it has haptic feedback in the controllers, just like the DualSense does for PlayStation 5.
I kind of like the ring to some degree.
Yeah.
Just because it gives you a little extra
buffer
for when you're knocking into things. They do become a problem. In Horizon, sometimes they clack together.
Yeah.
When I'm climbing, but
for
the most part, they seem okay.
Yep. And that's all the details. That's all you're going to get before it launches here in a week. Again, it launches October 10th for $500 for 128 gigs, which 128 gigs is plenty. I think.
Yeah, well,
you're going to have 5 or 6 games on there.
Yeah.
That's
as
fine.
long as the power is the same.
Right. And they are. They're the same.
Yeah.
It's just one has a bigger hard drive than the other. And again, the 512 costs $650. So there you go. You're armed with all the information you need to decide whether you want to buy a Quest 3.
The eye tracking is a big problem.
It is it's a huge deterrent compared to its competitors, honestly.
I was really thinking about it a little bit until I heard that. And I'm just oh, yeah.
Black Sierra asks, why was there Halo in the Quest promo? Because Microsoft signed a deal with Meta where you're going to be able to play Xbox games on MetaQuest 3 in VR. Like, I guess it just does some kind of weird, cheap conversion of the game or something.
No, it's just like I'm sure it's just projecting it. It's like it's probably streaming.
Yeah, but interesting nevertheless that Microsoft.
They just want you in the. It's Game Pass. They just want you in the
pretty
ecosystem.
Much. Yeah, because Microsoft, as we all know, has decided to not pursue VR like at all. Instead, it's decided to find a partner that can still make money off of VR without having to invest the money. Win-win.
Yeah, and eventually, I'm sure they'd like it to work out where they could have the Quest or whatever they end up with like compatible with Xbox. Probably the next one.
Let them
worry about it.
Mm-hmm. And then just make it work on our box.
They learned their lesson with the Kinect.
Win-win. And it took them a while.
Which only just stopped being manufactured.
Yeah, which is insane that they just stopped manufacturing
the
those.
Kinect was still being used for like industrial stuff, like it was not for non-gaming applications.
Yep.
Sort of like how they continue to use the Jaguar case mold for dental machines.
Right. Yeah. That is weird.
Just happens to fit the hardware.
Yeah. Cinetyke asks, will this kill PlayStation VR 2? Way cheaper if you don't have a PS5. Good point. But something have to be alive for it to die.
Yeah, you cannot kill what's already dead. Like, PSVR 2 does not seem to be a factor to anything at this point.
No offense to anybody who has it. But, yeah, it's pretty much dead.
I'll intend offense. I have it. I'll intend offense to myself on that. It was a stupid thing to buy, and I shouldn't have bought it, but we didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I'm going to be... That's absolutely getting written off at tax time, believe you me.
Oh, yeah.
That was a business expense.
Well, yeah, it totally is. You were on the show talking about it.
I wouldn't have bought it if it wasn't for this.
Yep, absolutely.
I would have taken my own advice and not bought it.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, moving on. Next up, the next PlayStation exclusive going to PC is Horizon Forbidden West. It is coming to PC. By the time it launches for PC in early 2024, it will be about 2 years old. We have established previously on GameFace that we are comfortable with 18 months being the period between a game launching on PS5 and then launching on PC. You're getting an extra 6 months in this case, so I think we're all good as far as, like, if you're a PlayStation owner, not being salty over losing the exclusivity of that game.
Yeah, the DLC has already been out for a year almost at that point. You're fine.
And it is the definitive edition, which means it will roll the base game in with the one big story DLC that they released for it into one package. But it's also coming to PlayStation 5, and it launches for PlayStation 5 in 3 days on October 6th. So don't go and buy Horizon Forbidden West here in the next few days, because on Friday, you'll be able to get it for the same price, and you'll get the DLC rolled into the game, and then follow it up for PC in February of 2024.
Or if you've already played everything on the others, you could, I don't remember. I think that's how that works. I think if the way they've done that, when you buy the combined version, you get a whole nother set of trophies.
Is that true?
Is that right?
Sometimes
it is, sometimes it isn't. I don't remember how they did it with Horizon, because I know Horizon Zero Dawn and the Frozen Wilds separately are different. Like, they're treated as like a different SKU in the PlayStation Store, and usually that means separate trophies.
Was there never a definitive edition of the first one?
Yeah, there's a combined edition.
There is one.
Yeah.
Okay. And they gave you separate trophies for it?
I think they did. Okay. I can't remember, because I never got the combined edition, but I know that, like, people that bought PS5s this summer, it had a code for the combined Horizon Zero Dawn, I think. Okay. Or maybe we had Forbidden West. I guarantee, I am 100% certain there's a combined version of both of those.
I think the only reason I've even really thought about putting this in the show, other than to let PC players know that an awesome game is coming to PC really soon, is that because there have been so few real PlayStation 5 exclusives released since that game, that it almost feels too early. Even though it's been 2 years. Like, to me it does. It's like, wait a minute, like, what other games have come out since that game that are big PlayStation exclusives? Like, a couple. Like, not very many.
Yeah, well, they also did a flurry of PlayStation releases
out of the gate
last year as well. Like, the Spider-Mans and all that.
They were heavy loaded in the front. Yeah. Which makes sense.
The two Spider-Mans came out on PC like within 6 months of each other, I think. Like, it felt like they just did a bunch of PC releases. Yeah. And I guess I wasn't paying attention. It looks like all the Quantic Dream crap is on PC now. Or when did that happen? Maybe that's been there forever and I just didn't pay attention.
Which ones?
Detroit Become Human keeps getting thrown at me on
That was
Steam.
A while ago. Yeah.
I hadn't seen any ads
because,
for it.
It wasn't a huge exclusive that I know people in our chat will disagree with this. Or people, for whatever reason, we have people in our chat that really like those games. But for most people, those were not huge exclusives. So when they went to PC, people didn't really make a big stink about it.
Well, I mean, there's a few of those. Like, I know that Days Gone has people that think it's not terrible for some reason, but like that came out on PC, and no one really noticed.
Yeah. So
I'm
anyway,
sure it's better on PC, but
yeah. So anyway, again, Horizon Forbidden West Definitive Edition coming on Friday to PlayStation 5, and then coming to PC in early 2024. And then we got a deluge of Netflix gaming-related shows. Netflix did some kind of event this past weekend where they showed off all their gaming-related shows that are coming up, and there's a ton. And unfortunately, we cannot show you B-roll for these because they throw up copyright strikes. So unfortunately, we can't show you this stuff, but you have to use your imagination. And then when the show's over, you can go to Sit and you can watch the trailers for all this stuff. But there's one coming for Devil May Cry, which is like an animated anime series.
It's the same people that did Castlevania.
It is, yep, which has been pretty good. There's a Tomb Raider show coming that picks up the story after the new trilogy, which you would figure it would go back in time.
And once again, talks about her becoming the Tomb... Is she the Tomb Raider yet? Are we? What is the obsession with the rise of the Tomb Raider? What the hell is with you people? It's not that complicated. She runs around, she steals shit. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
It's in the title.
And then this month, there is a new show coming for Blood Dragon. Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon's DLC is getting its own show on Netflix.
Sure.
To our point about how Far Cry used to be better. Do you think that that's going to do well?
If I had to make an animated show out of a Far Cry, I would definitely pick Blood Dragon.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's sure.
Yeah, I agree. And then in November, there's a show based on Onimusha.
Oh, who remembers Onimusha?
Like nobody. But I'm hoping that maybe this is like Capcom testing the waters to see if there's actually interest in the franchise, and maybe it will come back. Capcom just said it wants to start tapping into some of its older IP like a few weeks ago. Maybe this is one of the targets. I don't know. But I'm wondering how many people watching this show don't even know what Onimusha is. Like, our chat knows because they're our age and they're like us. They grew up playing Onimusha. My guess is a lot of the people who watch the show on YouTube probably have no clue what Onimusha is.
No genre, no sale.
It was a weird game. It was like a hack and slash with Resident Evil style fixed cameras.
It definitely started as a Resident Evil game
at
some point. It's sort of like, it's like Devil May Cry started as Resident Evil 2, and like it felt like Onimusha probably started as Resident Evil 4 or something at some point. Like, it's like another idea.
Yep.
I never found them very compelling. 3 has
popular.
3 has a really great intro CG with the giant mountain monster thing and Jean Reno running around and stuff. Like, that was just cool because of how weird it was, but I didn't like those games very much.
Yeah. But anyway,
didn't they do like a Smash Brothers clone with kind of game with that?
Yes, they did actually.
Yeah, wasn't there like a weird Onimusha?
Was it like Warlords or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was like a weird beat 'em up fighting game thing.
Maybe it doesn't need to come back, but anyway, there is a show launching in November on Netflix for Onimusha, and then another season of Sonic Prime is coming. Which, did you watch the first season of that?
No, I forgot that existed until you mentioned
it's a kid show. It's squarely targeted at kids.
Yeah, it's Sonic.
Yeah.
Sonic is for children.
Yeah.
Like, that is the whole point.
Yeah. Are you surprised that Netflix is going so heavy on gaming?
Not really, because it's built-in IP that I mean, obviously Onimusha questionable, but like it's built-in IP that you get to people recognize.
Yeah.
That's the key, and all you need is early hits.
Yeah. All the stuff looked pretty good.
And they have nothing else to do while they wait for Stranger Things Season 5, so...
Yeah. Will that be the last season of Stranger Things?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought so.
Thank God. Well, the kids are like 30 now.
Yeah, now they're not kids anymore. Even the last season, I was like, okay, it's starting to stretch this a little bit here.
Yeah.
Like...
Well, I don't know if you've seen some of these kids recently, but it's just like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, Netflix is going all in on gaming. Which, if you thought The Witcher was like the end of it all, you were wrong. There's just more and more gaming stuff coming, which I think is awesome. Like, I love seeing these properties that I care about in a new medium, to see how they're handled, to see how the publishers handle them. Ubisoft has a huge hand in the Blood Dragon stuff. Like, Ubisoft, much like PlayStation, has its own film and TV division.
We sure wouldn't want anything to go wrong with the integrity of Far Cry Blood Dragon.
Exactly.
I hope the guy who basically single-handedly created that is involved in all that somehow.
Well, the weird thing about it is that Far Cry isn't in the title of the show. Right. It's just Blood Dragon.
Well, that's what I hope it's because that dude basically created Far Cry Blood Dragon without permission.
Right.
Like, he was like, we should do this, and they're like, that doesn't sound very good. So he just made it on his own. He's like, check this out, and they're like, all right, I guess it does look pretty cool. Like,
coolest DLC in Far Cry history.
I ran it. It wasn't DLC.
Yeah, well, you're right. It was a standalone game. That's right. I forgot about that.
And I met that guy at. You remember when people used to gather for B4?
Yeah.
Everybody get
basically we'd all just show up and get drunk 2 days before E3. It's basically what it was.
At the Cat and Fiddle because everybody flew in early, and I met that guy over there, and I was like, oh, that was awesome. And he's like, all I wanted to do was make a heavy metal laser game, and I'm like it was just like it's just literally he's like, I wanted to play that game, so I made it, and it's like that's how you get great ideas.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, big stuff coming from Netflix if you're into games. Next up. We found out this week that Gran Turismo Sport is going offline in January. Matt, this is probably the Gran Turismo that I have played the least in my gaming career. It felt like it was supposed to be like just
that's a very close race for me. The last 6 are all kind of
the first 3 I played a ton, like up through A-Spec. I played a ton of Gran Turismo.
A-Spec's probably the last one I really played to any long length of time.
And then after that, they just all started bleeding together. I never really got into them. And this one felt like a spin-off game.
As soon as Forza showed up, like that was the end of Gran Turismo.
Yeah, it really was for me. Yeah. This felt like a spin-off. Like it wasn't even like a main entry, and so for whatever reason, I just kind of ignored it. But it was huge. Like
this game felt like basically stalling for time.
Yeah.
While we waited.
While the next
7.
big one showed up, but this turned out to be a huge hit, and like that, I think the whole story of Gran Turismo the movie about the guy who was like a Gran Turismo esports star who now is like
playing this.
He was playing this. This is the game that he trained on to become a real driver, and now he's not just a real driver. He's one of the best drivers in the sport.
Yeah,
that's pretty insane, don't you think?
Didn't translate to the box office.
No, well, because the movie was terrible, but still, this game will go down in infamy for that reason alone. Like everybody always made, racing games, playing racing video games isn't the same as driving. Oh, really? Is it not the same?
Because I mean, it isn't. He had the training was hard on him, but like, it does teach you some fundamentals of the physics of it and the. I mean, that's the big one was knowing the tracks by heart.
Yeah,
like that. I mean, knowing every curve, knowing all like that. That is an advantage. I mean, obviously, every driver in that league knows all that, but that is something that you can't learn. Except usually by experience, but he learned it through a video game, and that gave him like a weird jump in that. He had to basically get in shape to drive those cars because that is literally a physical act of will. I mean,
it is. Yeah,
people do. We're just driving car. Like, no, it's very hard.
Yeah,
it's very hard.
Pretty much every professional driver has iRacing and has a huge iRacing rig, like a $15,000-$20,000 iRacing rig. So even people who grew up driving real cars see the value in playing video games.
Military pilots have flown simulators for as longer than we've been alive.
It's true.
Like anytime you can practice in a realistic environment without risking your life or the vehicle, do it.
Yeah.
Like that has always been valuable.
Yeah. So I think ultimately Gran Turismo Sport is going to go down as a far more significant entry in the franchise than a lot of people maybe thought.
Or at least they're one of the more interesting footnotes.
Yeah, for sure. Next
but
up.
Also, offline just means the online play is going away. You'll still be able to play it.
Yeah.
Obviously.
You'll be able to play the single player.
Just not against
Although that game was kind of focused on multiplayer.
It was.
Yeah.
Not when I played it.
Yeah. And now we have a game that's definitely focused on multiplayer, or at least focused on Ultimate Team. And that is EA Sports FC 24. The game launched last week. Didn't really even make a ripple here in the U.S. Sales were down 30% in Europe, where this game is one of the best sellers every year. Now, obviously, we've talked about it before on GameFace. This year they dropped the FIFA license. They're like, go, we can do it on our own. We'll still license all the players. I don't think we really know that. They could not come to an agreement on how much to pay FIFA for the license is what happened. So probably a little bit on both sides. But sales are down 30% so far the first week of sales for this.
Well, at retail. We don't know what it did digitally.
You're right. That is all physical. But still, I mean, that's a barometer at the very least. Sales are down. But why do you think that is? Do you think people care that much about the FIFA, or do you think they don't recognize it's the same game?
It's the recognition.
Really?
I don't think it matters. People hate FIFA. Like people, nobody likes the organization of FIFA. Yeah. It's just I'm sorry, but EA's football club sounds like like that generic also ran it sounds like All-Star Football 2020 or whatever. It's like, it's like the game on Dreamcast they're trying to trick you into buying instead of NFL 2K,
right? Yeah.
And so I'm sure like not having that brand recognition on it is hurting it.
Yeah.
I've also seen some people that say they won't buy it because it focuses too much on women, which is like, I mean, cool, be that.
You don't have to
that
play
asshole.
You don't
well
have to
done.
play as the women.
Yeah, I'm sure
to.
it's not that. You're not going to be forced to be a girl, dude. Don't worry. No one's coming for your dick over the internet. Believe me, no one's coming for your dick in real life either.
Period.
So just there you go.
And I think, Matt, that's the problem. No one's coming for the dick, and so they hate the world. I mean, let's be honest. That's what's going on here, Matt. So anyway, this is down 30% this year. Already there's a controversy about Ultimate Team because one of the Ultimate Team things that everybody wants, there's no way to buy a pack of real money that will let you pay for the DLC that everybody wants. So you have to buy 2, which results in you having way more fake currency in the game than you ever wanted.
Yeah, and then you got to spend it. Oh, I don't have enough to buy this other, so I guess got to buy a little bit more. So then that's how they get you.
Exactly. Yep. And so EA is already getting raked over the coals. I mean, let's be honest. Ultimate Team is scummy in all EA Sports games. It just is. Yeah. And until you guys stop paying the money and giving them the money, it's never going to change. So if you can look,
I don't think it's this audience that's doing that.
No,
for the most
definitely
part.
not.
I think
we do not have a big sports audience. Our YouTube audience, a little more casual.
Right, but I think also more it's the people that would never even think about watching or listening to a gaming podcast or so. That's just what they do. Like you've said before, even if you spend this Ultimate Team's money, you're spending what, $300 in the only game you buy all year.
Yeah,
like it's not.
You're
that
actually
much.
saving money ultimately. Yeah, compared to us anyway. So anyway, EA Sports FC 24. Do you think that I'm sure they accounted for some kind of a drop off?
I mean, even if it's 30% all across the board, even with digital, that's not actually that bad.
It's not that bad.
It's something you can work with at least.
It is
going forward.
But I do think it's more money than they would have paid FIFA.
Yeah, probably. But who knows what kind of a cut FIFA suddenly was demanding.
That's true.
Like that. I mean, I think that's what I keep thinking, just in terms of why EA would back out of that or let that fall apart. It can't just be that they wanted more money for a license. It had to be they wanted a bigger cut of the revenue.
Could be. Or maybe they wanted to...
Which might be the same thing.
Right.
But,
or maybe they wanted more creative control over actually the game itself.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. Regardless, the math I don't think is working out for EA right now.
I mean, this is a real Alien versus Predator situation. Whoever wins, we lose.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't really matter.
That's funny.
But yeah. And FIFA's apparently going to try to make their... own game, so...
Oh, yeah. If they can find somebody to make it. And it's just going to end up being a mobile piece of trash. Be my guess. Next up, we got news this morning. We're kind of wondering, when the Switch 2 is coming out, and if it does, what's going to happen to the original Switch. Well, Nintendo gave us a little bit of insight into that today when it shared that it is going to support the first Switch with software, at least, until March of 2025. What does that tell you about Switch 2, Matt?
I mean, it tells me it's going to be similar to last time, where it's like, or every other system.
It's going to be backwards compatible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It better be.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't get to carry your Switch library forward to the new Switch, every single person in Nintendo's executive wing needs to be dragged outside and shot. Like that's crazy. Like, it'll be crazy. Yeah. Like, digital libraries have to come with your account from now on. There is no negotiation on that.
This is actually like the third hint that Nintendo has given us. Like, the first one was when it talked about how important the Nintendo account was.
Right.
And that it's making sure that everyone's accounts are going to move over to the next machine. That tells you right there that it's going to be backwards compatible. Yeah. Now they've just doubled down on it here. It does make me a little nervous that they're going to continue making games for that lower spec for a while.
It's just settings.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And it's not like the new Switch is going to be powerful enough to completely change how you design anything.
Conceivably with the Switch 2, you'll be able to build worlds with more polygons and triangles. So
that's a setting though. Like, you just can turn that up. Like, that's fine. Yeah, that's just a different mesh. That's Unreal Engine does that automatically.
Yeah. I don't know if it's that easy, but you're right. It's not as hard as it used to be.
I'm not saying it's automatic, but I'm saying it's just a setting. It's just low res versus high res detail. You can do that you can go downstairs and watch that happen on Cyberpunk on my PC right now.
But if it were that simple, there wouldn't be the big blow up over Series S, and we wouldn't have the problems that Series S is causing in the industry.
Well, the problem being caused is they can't make like high end features run on that, because you can only turn the settings down so low to make it run two versions of the game. It was a split screen problem with Baldur's Gate. And let's not forget, part of it was Microsoft was too stupid to prioritize Baldur's Gate. Like if they'd realized what Baldur's Gate was going to be, it probably wouldn't have been that kind of a problem.
Maybe.
But it's fine. It's fine. It's what we expected. There's no reason to expect anything else.
Does this give you any hint of when Switch 2 will launch?
Well, they supported 3DS for like 2 years.
Right.
So I don't know. Like obviously not 2 years because that's a year and a half.
Do you think maybe it's coming a little earlier next year than we're thinking? Do you think maybe it might come in like the early part of the year, like a March, April?
I think we'd have heard of it by now, and we have been hearing about manufacturing by now. So no,
that's the X factor.
So no, I think it's late next year. I'm sure it was difficult for them to give up the March launch because it worked so well for the Switch. The only thing I can tell you is that if they don't call it the Super Nintendo Switch, they're out of their minds.
I think they're going to call it Switch 2.
Switch 2 is terrible.
It really is, but I just think that they've made so much money on Switch.
It doesn't. No, the Super Nintendo Switch.
I hope you're right. That's a way better name.
It's also nostalgia bait. Like it's exactly what you're after.
Yeah.
Like,
it makes too much sense, which means it'll probably never happen.
The launch teaser should just be a recreation of the first Super Nintendo commercial, but with the Switch.
Yeah. So I don't know. As far as what's this telling us about Switch 2, I don't think that much. Because again, we kind of know already it's going to be backwards compatible.
The Nintendo Switch D4.
Switch D4?
I'll also accept that.
It's definitely not going to be that. But anyway, so look, if you own a Switch and you're wondering, like, when is the software going to stop coming for my machine before I have to upgrade to Switch 2, you're going to be covered at least 6 to 9 months after the Switch 2 comes out. My guess is it may even extend beyond March 2025. Again, Nintendo said at least until. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get...
As long as Switch 1 stuff is selling well, they'll keep supporting it.
They'll keep making it. Yep.
There's no reason not... There's nothing that's going to be a big revolution in how any of these games are made. It's purely going to be turning settings up and down.
And if Switch 2 tanks out of the gate, they will support Switch 1 for the next 4 or 5 years.
I can't see the Switch 2 bombing. Like, as long as it launches with something worthwhile. Launch it with a new Mario, which is got to be why they're holding back.
You have to convince people to upgrade is the thing.
Not with Nintendo. People just buy
right,
shit.
Actually. Everyone else you have to do that. But
how many fucking DSs do you own?
A lot.
How many DSs do I hold?
How many GBAs do I have?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. I'm guilty as charged.
Yeah, there we go. Nintendo Switch Advanced.
Advanced.
For God's sake, Mark, this is advanced. The NSA. That's a bad acronym, actually. Let's not do that. Let's not do the Nintendo Switch Advanced.
So my guess, I think we're going to hear something about Switch 2 at the Game Awards. I just do.
Yeah, I mean, it would, timing-wise, that would make sense. The only thing I could think would be if Nintendo wants to save that for themselves and not Jeff.
Yeah.
But that's the only reason I would say that would be held back.
Unless it's coming after, there's no E3 anymore. I can't see them announcing it at Summer Game Fest or whatever.
No, but they can just do their own direct and it's the same, really. I mean, actually what I could see is like a teaser thing with some little direct a little before the Game Awards, and then, I don't know, somebody talks to Jeff about it at the Game Awards.
I think the teaser's at the Game Awards saying, watch out for our Nintendo Direct in February or January or whatever.
I don't think Nintendo wants another person's show to be where they premiere that hardware. I think they want to do it themselves.
Maybe.
I think you will see it.
I mean, they did it at E3 for 20 years.
You will either see it in some small form before the Game Awards, or it will not be at the Game Awards. I don't think they will give Jeff that.
All right. We'll see.
Maybe when Reggie was still there, but not anymore.
Yeah, the good news is it's totally okay for you to start getting excited about Switch 2.
I don't know.
It's happening.
I don't know if Doug Bowser is going to be that friendly.
We'll see. And then our final topic for today's housekeeping is something that I hinted at a little bit earlier, which is that Naughty Dog, a studio we all hold in very high regards, has just laid off a bunch of QA workers who apparently were working on the Last of Us multiplayer game that we've talked about a bunch of times here on the show, and rumors are swirling that it is going to be canceled. That's right, sifters. A Naughty Dog game may be canceled. And I'm sure that's happened in the past, but not one that like was announced and like talked about by the studio. I'm sure they've had projects that just didn't work out and they canceled them quietly, but
yeah, although with this I am other than obviously the layoffs suck, but I am tempted to say that nothing of value was lost.
Yeah, I can't say I'm going to shed any tears tonight over this revelation, other than the fact that a bunch of people were laid off. Now, they were QA people working on this game who were contract workers, so they technically weren't staff who were working in-house at Naughty Dog, but that's why they want you to be a contract worker, because you're much easier to fire, and then they don't have to pay you severance or any of that other stuff that a lot of people get when they lose their jobs.
Apparently they were trying to tell all current employees and laid off employees to be quiet about it, but if you don't give someone severance, then they don't have any reason to be quiet about it, and you cannot enforce non-compete clauses in California, so that's the end of that.
Why would they not want people to know? Is it to just save the Naughty Dog reputation, to be peerless?
Yeah, it's just it's just image.
Cinetyke asks, could it mean that testing is done and the game can launch? No. You always have to keep...
You wouldn't do that with an ongoing online game.
You have to keep your QA at least until the first few months of the game being on the market. Then you can move them onto other games.
But even then, you still need that team on that game because you're going to do updates and it's an ongoing, living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
Like you still need to constantly test the new updates and the new patches and the upcoming deals, whatever you're going to add to it. Like, you would still have a functioning team on it that wouldn't be a layoff of this magnitude.
And by the way, I should mention, this is not the game that the people were laid off from. This is just the Last of Us multiplayer factions. This is from the first game, which I did not really resonate with. It did seem like it had a pretty good audience, but it was not my thing.
It's always, everyone I know, even the people that are big multiplayer gamers I know, none of them have ever really jived with any of the Naughty Dog multiplayer, this or Uncharted. Like, it just, and Uncharted, I've never played this, but Uncharted multiplayer I just bounced right off.
Yep.
Even for me,
this and both of them I bounced off of it. They just didn't catch my attention. Totally respect people who did enjoy it, but it just wasn't for me. So, yeah, I'm with you, Matt. To me, this isn't really that huge of a loss. It was not like I was waiting for it with bated breath. And I would rather Naughty Dog work on its new fantasy game or whatever the hell else it wants to work on, other single-player stuff.
I mean, they're doing something because mocap started again.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's Last of Us 3 or whatever or something else. It could be anything.
Yeah. I'm hoping the next game is the new
But
IP.
if the SAG strike hits video games next, that might get put on ice for a while.
Yeah. I generally just don't like third-person multiplayer games. I usually like to play first-person. Third-person always just feels a little clunky to me. There have been exceptions. I enjoyed the Assassin's Creed multiplayer mode for a couple days before
I mean, it can definitely work. Gears of War works just fine.
Yeah.
But, like, just something never quite clicked about Uncharted or Last of Us as multiplayer. Also, like, I never, in all the hours I've played Uncharted and Last of Us, at no point have I ever been playing those and thought, you know what would be great if I could play this against other people. Like, it's just not, it's so not what I want out of that game.
Naughty Dog's great at making single-player games.
Yeah.
Just stick to doing what you're great at. Like, you don't have to have a multiplayer.
Stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to.
Look, I'm sure Sony Corporate is like, we need you guys to create a game that lives for the next 7 years so we can keep making money off of your fans for the next 7. I understand why they tried.
Oh, sure. But not everybody's going to do it. Yeah. And also, especially Naughty Dog feels like a company. It feels like if you got to have inspiration there. Yeah. Like, the stuff is so over the top and time consuming and detail oriented that if you don't really love and believe what you're making, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to be there.
Yep.
So it's probably a much better use of everybody's time and Sony's money to just let Naughty Dog put out what Naughty Dog is best at.
Agreed. Yep. So there you go.
Give them freedom to experiment, but this doesn't feel like something that they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Felt like I would also put money on it being a top-down, let's say, request,
right,
from the company that wants 10 games as a service out.
They're like, we'll give you 30 people to tinker around and see if you can find something, and it sounds like they didn't. So we'll see, but it sounds like it was canceled to me. Personally, I'm not going to shed any tears over it. And that's it for our housekeeping for episode 360. We're just about to get into the heart of GameFace 360, but before then, here's a word from our awesome sponsor, LS Green.
LS Cream is a fine cream liqueur created by fellow gamer and sifter Stevens Charles. It's inspired by an ancestral recipe from Haiti called Cray Mass, and a double gold winner for its original taste at the New York Wine and Spirit International Competition. LS Cream can be enjoyed on the rocks or as a mixer for drinks with its rich blend of fresh cream and neutral grain spirits with notes of coconut, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It's great in coffee or to make espresso martinis. To learn more, discover amazing drink recipes, or to track down your own bottle using a handy store locator, head to creamls.com/sifted. That's creamls.com/sifted.
So as it turns out, I was unable to turn my aunt onto LS Cream as I had hoped because she got here. She works for, as it turns out, she works for Mattel. She had worked for Kraft. She now works for Mattel. And also, by the way, I was like, hey, you have any inside lines on like Transformers stuff? And she's like, oh yeah. And I was like, well, you need to hook me up. Like,
Mattel doesn't make Transformers.
I thought they did.
Hasbro makes Transformers.
Oh, I thought they were the same, like,
no,
under a same umbrella or whatever.
Mattel and Hasbro are the last standing toy companies.
Wow, that's kind of crazy.
There has been some talk of merging every once in a while over the years, but it hasn't happened. And honestly, nobody knows. That wouldn't do anybody any favors.
Yeah.
Like, Hasbro's just successful enough to not need it, and Mattel is way too successful.
The funny part is she was like, I do. She told me that she did have like people that she could talk to with the with Transformers.
I mean, everybody in the toy industry knows each other.
Oh.
It's a small world.
Interesting. But anyway,
also, Mattel is trying to do some Transformers stuff right now, which is
probably not going to work out well. Well, I might be able to get it to you for free, Matt.
No, I'm good. I've seen it. They're fine. We're all right.
Well, I did not get to turn her on to LS Cream, unfortunately, because she was staying out by Mattel, which is in El Segundo. By the way, I almost was killed driving to pick her up.
Oh, wow.
By a road rage incident. We were creeping along, and my nav was like, get off this exit. And I'm like, okay. So I looked at my back mirror, nobody. Go to pull out of the traffic to get off the exit, and some guy comes screaming up beside me like 100 miles an hour and almost hits me. I swerve over. He pulls over, gets out of his car, and comes up and like is trying to like kill me. His 4-year-old daughter's in the car. Guy is losing his mind. And I just looked at him and I was like, what the hell? And I just took off. And I'm like, why am I even going to deal with you? So I just took off. As it turns out, you get to the end of the exit, there's a stoplight, and I was stuck there. And that dude pulled up, and I thought he was going to kill me. He's like, you don't know who you're talking to. You don't know who these... I'm like, dude, you're losing your mind.
Why would I know who I'm talking to?
Why would I know? You almost hit me. I ignored you and went, and you're still here yelling at me? Like, I'm trying to talk reasoning to this guy, and he was literally out of his mind. I really thought he was going to shoot me and kill me. The people parked next to me started calling 911. It was insane. I looked over. There was a woman who was like mortified. And I was like, okay, this is serious. Like, at first I'm like, am I overreacting? No. This guy was psycho. I finally convinced him he was being a nut job. He gets back in his car and peels out and takes off, runs a red light, and almost hits like a person walking across the crosswalk. I'm like, what the hell? So anyway, I then pick her up, and she's a big Packers fan, and it was Thursday night, and they were playing on Thursday Night Football. And so we didn't go back to our place. We ended up going to a bar in Santa Monica so she could watch her Packers, and we watched football on the beach or whatever. So I did not get to turn her on to LS Cream. I did mention it to her, though, that I was like, oh, there's this drink I wanted you to try. She does enjoy drinking, but she never made it back to our place before we had to take her back to her hotel, unfortunately. But you guys should try LS Cream. Just go to creamls.com/sifted. That's SIFTD. Awesome website. Has everything you need to make awesome drinks with LS Cream, or to just find out where to buy it locally or where to buy it online. I swear to you, I have not had a single person contact me and say, I tried LS Cream and I didn't like it. Not one. I have gotten dozens of messages from people saying, I tried it and I love it. So anecdotally, everyone seems to like it. Head to creamls.com/sifted and pick up your own bottle. And with that,
on the plus side, you didn't leave your wallet there.
That is true, in El Segundo. And she did not know that song.
What the hell?
Which is weird. She's like total pop culture, like crazy. She's in her 60s, but she acts like she's like in her 20s or 30s. She had never heard that song. I was like, what?
Well, she's the right age to have heard of it when she was
exactly when it came out. I know. I was blunt. Both my wife and I were like, really? You've never heard that song? She's like, nope. And then of course we sang it for her. So anyway, it's time to get on.
You were on a quest.
I was.
To sing it for her.
Exactly. So anyway, let's get on with GameFace 360 proper. We're going to kick off the show with, you guessed it, we teased it in last week's episode, Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, the last piece of story-based DLC for Cyberpunk 2077, coming several years...
the only piece of story.
Coming several years after the base release. We all know the story of how it launched. It was a disaster on PS4 and Xbox One. Played much better on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series.
Referenced even in the ad campaign for this.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they... I'm... Props to that final line in the commercial, if you've seen the one with Idris Elba walking around.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's just like, just remember, the game is fixed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I
Double
see what you did
entendre
there. Yeah, okay.
It's pretty great. And it launched just a couple days after CD Projekt Red launched Cyberpunk 2077 2.0, which is what Matt and I talked about in last week's episode. But today, we're going to actually talk about the game. And I would argue, Matt, that this is kind of like Cyberpunk 2077 2.
Yeah, I mean, the story is about as long as, I would say, the main story in the original game.
Yeah. It's about 18 to 20 hours long. I don't know how much time I spent. Probably 30 hours playing the base game to finish it would be my guess.
Well, my current save, because I started a new game when 2.0 hit, and I played up into the point, at least, where Phantom Liberty opens, is available as a quest. I think at this point I'm around 50 hours. Total for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm clearly not. I'm not remotely done with the main story. I've done one branch of the three, basically, because one branch of the three gets you to where you need to be to do the Phantom Liberty stuff, which makes sense. But I think I'm like two or three quests from the end of Phantom Liberty. It's meaty.
It's big.
It's real. It's for real.
I'm not even.
And there's a bunch of side stuff. There's more. There's a whole fixture with more gigs and stuff. I mean, it's a big chunk. I mean, it's just like Heart of Stone and Blood and Wine. Like it's a significant chunk of content.
Yep. Now, we're coming from two different perspectives here. I'm coming from the perspective of I finished Cyberpunk 2077 and then started playing this. You're coming from the perspective of you haven't finished it and you started playing it. So let's talk about how it starts. So for me, all I had to do was hit continue to when the main boot screen booted up. Hit continue. It drops me back into the open world, and then I get a phone call, and it says, "Hey, go here." And then I go there, and I will say this: when I got there, it was like this checkpoint with like dozens and dozens of soldiers. And the first 3 times I tried to start it, they attacked me. And I got into these firefights that lasted for like 20 minutes before I ultimately died or just gave up and drove away.
Yeah, I think you're not supposed to get too close to the checkpoint.
In the car.
Yeah.
Because what I did was, the third time, I parked like a block away and walked right in, and no one said a word.
Yeah, because you're supposed to basically stop and walk to the side here where this scene happens.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you get too close, the little eyeballs start popping up, or they're like, oh, and so yeah,
and it's literally like 50 dudes that attack you. Yeah. So you walk until you find this girl, and that triggers the opening cutscene where she makes Johnny Silverhand disappear, which we're seeing right now. And for the first several hours of this DLC, Johnny is gone, and she is the voice in your ear. But then, I don't want to spoil too much. Things eventually change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thrust of the story is trying to find her.
Yeah.
Because again, they don't know what cyberpunk is. They get the cyber right, but the punk part no. Because literally what has happened in this cutscene is she asks you if you are a bad enough dude to rescue the president.
Yep.
And I don't know if there's anything less cyberpunk than teaming up with the president of the United States. Right. I really don't. I can't think of another thing.
This president is pretty badass.
She's pretty cool. Yeah. They also have not, at least so far in my game, have not answered the question of what she was doing flying over Night City.
Right.
Because it's interesting because it gets into the politics of the world of cyberpunk, which are interesting, but most people aren't going to be familiar with because it's not really relevant, and you'd have to read a lot of shards or the RPG source books. But luckily for you, I have read the RPG source books. But basically, Night City is a free city, which means and North and South. There's 51 states in the new United States. North and South California have divided into their own things. But most of the western states are what are called free states, so they participate in the federal government, but they basically do not listen to the federal government. They basically are their own entities. but they get the benefit of being part of the United States. And then Night City is a free city. Night City was neutral during the Unification Wars and basically can do whatever it wants, which is handy for an open world game because it means that you don't have to pay attention to what would be legal or illegal outside of what Night City does.
Yep.
It's also useful for a tabletop RPG in that regard. So the question kind of becomes like, there's not really a lot of reason for the President of the United States to be this far west. So the reason she was out here is an open question early on.
Yep.
And then the girl that you're looking for is
the Netrunner girl in the opening cinematic is supposedly with her on the plane.
She's with her on the plane. She's like basically the president's right-hand hacker.
Yep.
And
she's
like
a Netrunner.
And when the plane going down is actually a really cool scene. Like it's a very impressive little sequence.
You'll see a little bit. You'll see it in here actually. It's in the B-roll.
And she disappears early on when you're escorting the president around like a real punk would. And,
well, she's supposed to be in the plane, but you get to the plane.
The plane's just destroyed.
It's destroyed, but the president's there and she's not there.
Yeah, everyone's dead or thrown around or whatever. Like
except for the president nasty. Somehow.
Well, she was in the secure pod,
right?
And nobody else got in the pod.
Yeah.
Get off of my plane. So like, there's a whole thing with that, and then basically it's you get her to safety, and she sends you to go find Idris Elba, and that's how it starts.
Yep.
But that takes like 3 hours.
It takes a long time. Just rescuing.
You just getting in Dogtown, which is the new area, is Dogtown.
Yeah, the area you saw just a couple minutes ago in the B-roll, that kind of underground like city thing, that's Dogtown.
Yeah.
You're seeing it now.
This is Dogtown. Basically, it's an area in the southwest of Night City that you couldn't get into, but that checkpoint was always there.
But
there was just no way to get in until now. And the checkpoint, you can go in and out. Once the prologue is done, you can actually leave and come back whenever you want. Like, you're not stuck in Dogtown for the whole thing. You have to go through like this little scanner checkpoint, which is clearly the game loading the map, the other map in.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can get. I mean, this.
Oh wait, Matt, how did you start it?
Same way.
Without having finished it. You just went to that same point and
you get the same phone call, go over there, and you have the same cutscene.
Okay.
It's the same thing. As long as you finished, I think the mission's called Transmission, which in the main story is where you're looking. It's like the midpoint of the Judy branch of the main story, where you're looking for. I think her name is. Now I can't remember her name, but she's the hacker Johnny knew who basically digitized herself into cyberspace.
Yeah.
And you have to finish that mission because you do need to have a pre-existing relationship with the Voodoo Boys and to have encountered the Black Wall to understand part of what's happening in this story.
Here's the scene Matt was talking about where her plane gets hit and it goes down.
So Dogtown is a basically a little fortress inside of Night City run by a crazy paramilitary guy with his own private army, and they shoot down the president's plane with SAMs.
Yep.
And that kind of throws a wrinkle into the plan you were trying to enact.
And so it goes down, and now it's your job to get to the crash site. And again, all this takes like 3 hours to get through.
Yeah, because you have to sneak into Dogtown through like the back way through all this crap, and there's actually a shocking amount of platforming.
Yeah, I cut all that out of the B-roll, but there is literally like 2 hours of just traversal and platforming, like going up through like these skyscrapers that are just only kind of half built and like.
Yeah, my cyberware legs were the ones where you hold the jump button and charge it up, and you can jump super high.
Yeah.
And thank God I had those, because either that or I think the double jump legs are probably necessary to get through.
Look how gorgeous this game is.
It really is very nice. Like the new.
Obviously, this is 1080p, but this is running in quality mode. This is not in frame rate mode. This is about as good as it's going to look on PlayStation 5, minus the resolution. But hot damn, like,
the new
it looks so good.
The Ray the Ray Pathfinding or whatever they do. It's like it's very, very pretty.
Yeah.
It's, at times, it is the best looking game
on the market
in existence.
It is, yeah. Like even on PS5, it looks pretty good.
It's just stunning in places.
Yep. Now you're starting to see some of, you're seeing weapons right now, but eventually you're going to get to see one of the new additions to Phantom Liberty, which is a brand new skill tree. And I have found some of the things in that tree to be some of the best things in the game. Things that literally change how I play the game.
They are if they're things you're already using. If they're not, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
If you're already using the cyber implant arm stuff, there's some great upgrades in there.
And this is it right here.
You're already using
relic path.
Basically, they're really great upgrades if you're already using the cyber arm upgrade things, if you're already using optic camouflage, and if you're the other ones are just if you're shooting. I've used that. That's the path I went down, because it basically drops a a diamond target, a vulnerability target on
I love it.
an enemy, and if you hit it enough times, it blows up an EMP blast that hits everybody around.
I
them.
love it. As soon as I turned that on, it changed how I play the entire
It's pretty
game.
much instant death.
Yeah, it's
for most
awesome.
enemies.
Yeah. Again, after having played the entire game, it changed how I play the game. Every moment-to-moment part of this game, it changed how I approach it.
And my character is very different from yours. Mine, you know, you're going. It looks like you're going all body, and technical ability.
Reflexes.
So I have 20 intelligence, 18 reflexes, and 20 technical ability. I am basically a mage.
Yeah,
who
you're
can
the
shoot a
exact
gun.
opposite. I'm the gunner, basically. Yeah.
And I can kill people with quick hacks before they even see me.
Which is awesome.
Which is fun. Like it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But there was a period of, and it was interesting because there was a period of time where like I realized that you get perk points and good bonuses from like solo stuff, which is like only shotguns and close range. So I actually did run around just killing random guys with shotguns for a long time with no bonuses, no skills attached. I mean, they're still fine. You get a powerful enough gun. You're good. But I did that for a long time to get my solo rating up to like 30 or 35 because I wanted the perk points for other things.
This really is one. We say this all the time, but this really is one of those games where you can play it exactly how you want to play it. And it's drastically different.
It does play different, but there is, for once, there's probably a better way to min-max one way or the other. But like I'm pretty sure the quick hack stuff is probably still the most powerful thing in the game, like it was before. But at no point do you feel not powerful playing as any other form. You know, I'm running around. I never used ranged weapons before. I built into a full like slow time down samurai guy in the original version where I could just cut everybody's heads off before like time slowdown even ended, and like that was fine. I haven't even used swords in this. I've been using assault rifles and shotguns.
I only use guns,
and like it's great. It's a lot of fun.
It plays great. Feels great.
All the methods of killing people are fun in this version of the game, which was not true before.
Yeah, it's a huge change, a huge shift.
Yeah,
and again, this feels like a sequel. I mean, it's like 18 to 20 hours long. That's longer than half of video games that are released, probably?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably about the same length as Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, and it's $30.
Yep.
Like, I haven't quite finished it yet. I already feel like I've got my money's worth and then some.
Yeah, well, on top, I mean, I've replayed the game and enjoyed it way more than I did before. Like, I have played this save more than I've played this game completely, like, total for the last 3 years.
Wow.
Like, this 2.0 plus Phantom Liberty completely changes the game into a much, much better experience, at least for me. This is just the fact that the perk trees are interesting now. That like you can make an interesting character that's like, oh, now instead of 3% more damage on the quick hacks, I can line them all up with some guy, and then like the second one only costs half RAM, and then if I activate this I have an overclock ability, which basically lets me spend even beyond my RAM, but if I'm spending beyond my RAM, I'm doing health damage to myself, but I can keep doing that, and then like there's basic other like perks like around that I can get that heal me based on how much damage my quick hacks do. Like so you've got this give and take thing that it all just kind of works in a circular manner. Once you're fully upgraded, you walk around like a goddamn god.
I don't think I can die in this anymore. My health packs regen so fast that like I'm always have health, and as long as I remember to use health, I'll never die.
Yeah, well, I also have a cyber upgrade that like one of them is just a time-based thing where if my health drops too far, it automatically does a health boost.
Yeah.
And I have another one that if I die, it just resurrects me. it's literally
you
called,
literally will never die.
Called a second heart.
I didn't.
It has like a 3-minute cooldown. I'm just like, all right, that was fine. I have never died in this version of the game.
I have. I've died a couple times, but like I fought a boss in this. I died when I tried to take on that whole checkpoint. Is when I died the first time.
I almost died similarly because there's one of the side things in this is stealing cars for El Capitan, who's one of the fixers from the original game.
Yeah.
But it's like a little steering wheel icon that pops up everywhere. If you do enough of them, you get to do a big heist mission, which gets you a really good car, which has a weaponized car, because there's weaponized cars now that have machine guns or missile launchers or both sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is extra funny because you can drive in and out of the checkpoint. We drive in and out of that checkpoint at Dogtown. They scan you, and it's like, scan. I'm like, I don't know what you're scanning for because I literally have military equipment in this car, so I don't know what else you're looking for. I'm just going to drive on into your fucking city. But so you can get that, which is really cool. However, you have to deliver the cars to him at his garages outside of Dogtown. So if you pick one up in Dogtown, you got to get out and go through the checkpoint. So there's two things that can happen when you pick one of these. One of them is you can be attacked by random gang members who want their car back. And if that happens and you're trying to go into the checkpoint, it also aggroes the paramilitary guys. And I got in this whole fight where I was like 4 times over this happening and not being able to get the fucking car out of the thing. And all these 40 like military guys attacking me, and like they blew all my tires, so I'm like just like driving around on rims and I can't get away from them. And I ended up I almost died fighting off like 40 of them at one point. And I just hid behind a car and they couldn't find me and left, so I drove on. But the other thing about that is like the other thing that can happen when you're stealing the car is he'll be like, oh, the client wants it now, so you have to get here in a certain amount of time, and if you don't get it there in time, you just get less money. It's fine. And he like makes fun of you basically for sucking at your job. But sometimes it's fine. A couple times I've gotten a time that's impossible. One time I was 4 kilometers away from the drop point, and the timer came up with 45 seconds. And I'm like, no, that's not a possible thing. Yeah. Also, one of the being very like focused on like how far I have to go versus like how fast I'm going. Why are the distances in the GPS kilometers and the cars are miles per hour?
I don't know.
Trying to keep both sides happy, I guess.
Like I know because like the cars are miles per hour because it's California, because it's America, right? Yeah. But why is the GPS in kilometers?
In an alternate world, we took up the metric system.
I guess because my eyes are made in Japan. That's why.
Oh, you're right.
That's why. It's the Kuroshi optics. That's what does it. That's what does it.
That's funny.
But that is one of the only complaints I have about the game, is that I think there's a bug in the you got to deliver the car in this amount of time thing, because some of those times are way too low.
Yeah. Now the fights are challenging, but your chances of dying in the fights are so slim.
Well, especially because by the time you take this on, you're pretty well built.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
you also can completely respec now.
Yeah, you can just wipe out
everything. Want. Like Matt and I were talking before the show started today about how we'll come to doors where it'll say you need a certain amount of power to open the door. Right? Yeah, like right there. And sometimes if we're close, we'll just go back and we'll respec to open the door.
Yeah, I did that last night. I got to a door that required 20 strength, and there was a way to get back around and climb up here and go. I'm like, you know what? Respec, 20 strength, 20 body, open the door,
go back to
my old spec. Yeah, it's like.
You can jimmy it a little bit, for sure.
These are, however, I would say the toughest enemies in the game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And there are, like, little, like, sometimes you'll see, like, 3 green skulls on the map. Mm-hmm. That's where, like, you'll find relic upgrade points there and, like, some really good loot. And if you fight that, like, those are the toughest enemies in all of Cyberpunk. And they have not killed me, but, like, I've
ran away from them before.
A couple of them have actually been, like, oh, you guys are challenged. Like, I ran into one that had some, like, healing ability. Then I'm like, oh, I can't actually damage you with just my gun. And I had to use, like, a combination of environmental and quick hacks and my weaponry. And I'm like, oh, I never had to do that before. That was cool.
Yeah. But, like, there's a boss fight pretty early on in this DLC.
Yeah,
and I beat him the first time, like, no problem.
It's a cool fight, though.
It is cool, yeah. And that's, again, this game is what I thought the base game was going to be.
Yeah.
It really is. I know it's a cliche. A lot of people have said it, but it's really true. Like, I really thought the pacing of this, the boss fight, like, there was really no memorable boss fights in the entire base game. Mm-hmm. Like, it was always just some other dude that you're fighting. It was never, like, a creature or, like...
memorable characters.
Yeah, like...
everybody you meet is kind of interesting. They're not all assholes to you. They're all assholes, but they're not all assholes to you. Which is, like, sort of the hallmark of the main game.
Well, you've paid your dues already, and a lot of them recognize it and respect it, which, again, is a shift from the base game. Where everyone just kind of looked at you
there are
as
a couple
like
moments
scrub.
in this where I've been like, where I thought, having just played the whole game from the start over the last like week and a half, it's just like there's moments where V's actually come a long way, hasn't she?
Yeah.
It's like she's not the same person she was when she and Jackie went in that stupid. And a couple times there's references like, yeah, you got to actually figure out a way into this tower that's better than walking in a suit into that. I'm like, yeah, that was a pretty dumb job, wasn't it? It was like
the end of the main base campaign. That happens. You recognize that he's come a long way because they present you with dialogue choices where you are forced to recognize it. And I know you haven't finished the base game yet, but that is one thing. Like at the end of the game, they kind of make a point to show you how much you've changed and improved and become more reliable, become a better person. Well, depending on your decisions anyway.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different endings. Actually.
Yeah.
But like the one thing I will say about the whole thing where they don't know what Cyberpunk is, Johnny does seem to know. and periodically gets very upset about the fact that you're working with the government.
Oh yeah. Did you recite the oath?
I did not.
I did.
And he
loses it.
He was like, thank God you didn't do that bullshit. Like,
yeah, because
he brings that up like 4 more times that he's like, at least you didn't do that. I'm just like, yeah.
I did. So when you rescue the president, she basically says, okay, you're joining up with us now.
Yeah, she basically makes you an FBI agent.
Right. And you can either choose to recite the oath or you cannot. I chose to. And Johnny Silverhand sat there and just berated me for like the whole time I was reciting the oath. And they give you chances to keep like backing out of it. Like you'll read one line and then it'll give you the option to recite the next line or to quit and give up. And I just kept reciting him, and he's got more and more. And that's why I kept doing it, because I wanted to hear what he was going to say to me.
So Johnny actually does somewhat embody the cyberpunk, the punk part of cyberpunk.
Well, he's in a punk band.
And he's a terrorist.
Which I had kind of forgotten until this DLC, where the one girl is a fan of, like a big music fan, and she's like, well, I didn't really like their second album. And I had forgotten that he was even in a rock band in the game.
Samurai.
Right. But because so much stuff had happened between when you first start the game and this DLC, I had completely forgotten that he was a rock star.
Yeah, well, I know that because Johnny, I know a lot of those characters I know already from
the books,
knowing the old RPG, because the old RPG takes place in his time, in 2020,
right?
And so Johnny Silverhand's a main character. Like, all the stuff in this were that, and him being like, he was a deserter from the military, and all like that goes through in the main game. That's all stuff that was in the old. I mean, even some of the like Rogue and those characters
were there books, or was it just the game?
They were game books. It's like D&D.
Okay,
they're tabletop RPGs, but all those source books had all that information. They were major characters in the world that you could use to like. They were just like they are in this game outside of, basically like Rogue, sits in the Afterlife bar and like, they talk about all the good old days. Like that's the original tabletop RPG.
Okay.
So that took place then. This takes place 50 years later.
Gotcha.
So there is an element of like Johnny could be commenting on like, we were cyberpunks back in the day, which is actually literally true because they literally call themselves cyberpunks in that game, which is very weird now to us.
Uh-huh.
But the genre was not a genre.
Right, back then. That's crazy.
But like it could be, he could be commentary on the fact that by 2077 this society has lost its way to the point that nobody even knows how to be a punk anymore. But they never really get there. With that. He never actually says that. That's never a theme that's really explored much beyond Johnny's kind of an asshole to everybody. But since you're the only one he can talk to, he's an asshole to you the most.
Noxatornitis asks if we're both playing on normal difficulty. Yeah, I am. And you are too, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does I think it gets a little too easy. Ultimately.
Yeah, you out-level. You don't out-level the game anymore. Like everyone pretty scales with you more or less. Like even random street punks are not nothing like they were in the original game. You could one-shot everybody in certain parts of town, but now that doesn't happen anymore.
Yep.
But it's still, everyone becomes a little trivial after a time.
Yep, for sure. Still fun though, and a lot of the fun is just like experimenting with the new weapons and all the perks and your trees and just seeing what it does and how effective it can be. Almost always it's effective enough. Sometimes it's really interesting to see when it's way over effective and it just wipes the mat with like the enemies in the game. But
yeah, for a time I was trying to do some stuff non-lethal because of requirements for certain quests, and I had so many like add-on damage that I kept hurting them after they were disabled, and it would kill them. Because if you can hit somebody with something non-lethal, but if they take any damage from anything after that last hit, it kills them.
Right. Yeah.
Now the good part is the game doesn't care.
Right.
Like you can. It
doesn't penalize you.
No, you can disable like the cyber psycho stuff where you're supposed to take them alive. Like you can kill them like that. You can disable them, and then as long as you disable them, you can then just go up and shoot their face off, and the game doesn't really care. You still get credit for bringing them in alive. Except one guy who has this like power pack that can explode after the fact, and that does not count. That does count as killing him for some reason.
Weird.
So you want to be able to do that. It was nice to see that, and that he was just the cyber psycho boss, but it was nice to see that enemy type come back as a high-level boss in some of those 3 green skull areas. Like, there's some nice surprises in this.
Yeah, for sure. And just nice throwbacks to remind you of stuff that happened earlier in the game. Like, It was great.
Just stuff that should have been more. I wish that had been more a thing in the main rest of the. I wish those 3 skull areas were everywhere.
Yep, I agree.
More nooks and crannies, more things that are challenging, more things that are interesting to find.
More reward for poking
Real
around.
Reward, yeah. And the 2.0 is better about rewarding you for things.
In general. Yep.
But the rewards for the stuff in the Phantom Liberty stuff are just above and beyond.
Oh, yeah. Like, very quickly, I had replaced my arsenal.
Yeah.
That I had really used for the last, 10 hours of the game.
And there's, a lot of
the base game.
And, the shards that can upgrade. I mean, you can find shards that upgrade different skills, but you can also find upgrade shards that give you more carrying capacity. Shards that give you a free perk point. There's some real stuff in there.
For sure. Notzerk, thank you for Twitch Prime. And Noxatornitis follows up by saying 2.0 is noticeably easier. Playing on very hard feels appropriate. Maybe. How do you switch to difficulty, actually?
At the very beginning.
Because I'm continuing from my other
I'm sure
save.
there's an option in there somewhere. I don't remember. I think you can change it whenever you want.
We generally play everything on normal because that's what most people play it on. And if we're evaluating it, for other people, it's not going to help them very much. If we're playing it on a difficulty they'll never play.
I don't know if I'd consider it easier, although I did die more in the original. But I don't know how much of that was just... It feels smoother, I guess would be the way I'd say. And maybe that does count as easier in the sense that you're not going to hit difficulty spikes quite as often.
It's possible, yeah.
And maybe the you're not going to wander off into somewhere and run into guys that are 10 levels higher than you. That just doesn't happen anymore.
I was surprised how long it took before I ran into... What's his name? The big actor who's the star of the DLC?
Idris Elba.
Yeah. It took a long time before you run into that guy.
Yeah, you're a few hours in before you find him.
Yeah, and he's like the big poster boy for this DLC, but you don't see him for quite a while once you start playing it. So just something to keep in mind. He's there. It'll just take a little while for you to get there. But for me, this is one of the best games of the year. This DLC, it's the length of a full game. It's one of the best games I've played this year. Yeah. And it's $30.
And it's like a No Man's Sky kind of comeback story.
It really is, yeah. If you played this initially, first of all, this isn't... If you played the PS4 and Xbox One version, you can't play any of this. This is only for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. So that's one thing to keep in mind. However, if you have the PS4 version or you bought the PS4 version when it came out and now you have a PlayStation 5, you do get the free upgrade to PlayStation 5, and then you can go on and you can just play it. And it'll have all your saves and all that stuff in there as well. Although, I will say this, my saves got wiped. So, the only saves I now have when I go to load a game are any saves that I've created after 2.0 launched. I don't know what happened to all my saves from when I played it before.
There was something similar happened with the cloud save stuff with Witcher 3, and I can't remember how I fixed it. But you probably can.
I probably can dig them up somehow.
Get them back because there's something like that happened where it wouldn't recognize the previous ones, but there was a way to kind of brute force it by specifically forcing. I had to do that for Witcher 3. I can't remember how because I didn't care on this because I just started. I literally deleted all my saves.
Really.
And deleted the game and reinstalled it when 2.0 hit because CD Projekt was actually saying you might want to just.
They said to do that.
They said you might want to just fresh install.
Yeah, clean install.
And honestly, that was a good. I mean, I had a problem with The Witcher 3 when they did all the upgrades and stuff that last time because there was a bug where if you had, I think it was if you had saves in there that did not have the update. If you had saves from previous versions in there, it never capped the autosaves, so at a certain point it was complaining that I had no room for more autosaves. Maybe this was 60 hours into my Witcher 3 new playthrough, fourth play, whatever, and I had to go look. They're like, oh, check your saves. I look on my Xbox, there are thousands of autosaves. There's supposed to be 6. It's supposed to just rotate through 6. It has not been deleting the autosaves. Every single autosave
2 gigs of saves
it has ever done in 60 hours of Witcher 3. Where I had to delete them all manually.
Oh my god!
I put on a podcast and went did that for an hour.
Oh my god!
And then they're make sure that nothing is old saves. Make everything.
They could pick up on it. Yeah.
And all you had to do was load it up and save it. Even if I want to keep my old, I'll load it up, save it. Now it's the whatever 0.0 whatever thing.
Yep.
And it was fine after that. But I played for that long, and it was your Xbox is full. You can't save anymore. I'm like, how in the world is that possible? Because there were thousands of autosaves on it.
Wow.
So maybe there's some sort of limiter on that was maybe a cloud thing. Maybe Cyberpunk does something to make sure that doesn't happen to it. Yeah. Because I have been checking. So.
Crazy. So anyway, someone asked me on Ask Shane Anything 2 episodes ago, I believe, about like the best DLC or my favorite DLC of all time. This shoots right up to the top. It's right there with like Blood and Wine.
Yeah, this and Blood and Wine are way up there.
It's amazing. Like, it is literally some of the best deals. It feels like you're playing Cyberpunk 2077 2. It feels like a sequel, and it's big enough to be
one
a
of the
sequel.
things that CD Projekt Red seems to do that I think is really smart with this is they let I think, as I understand it, most of the team that makes these DLCs are the main team that made the game in the first place.
Yeah.
So you're getting DLC made by people who know this game and the tech to make the game inside and out after having just made the base game.
Yeah.
And they're taking everything they've learned and applying it to this new thing where they're free to do almost anything they want.
And that's why you get the awesome
seems to work out pretty well.
that we were talking about, these little nods to moments in the base game. Like, I don't think that stuff happens unless you're somebody like that.
Yeah.
So just amazing work. It's really amazing to see how CD Projekt Red has pulled this game up out of the muck. It's like it's like it said to itself, we can't do this. We can't put this game out there, have it be a complete disaster, and have it soil our reputation forever. We have to fix it, and it did fix it.
And to be fair, they've done that with every game they've ever released.
You're right. It does it every time. And I will say this: there are still some bugs hidden in the game.
There's some weird stuff in there. I mean, any open world game's gonna have some of that.
But I had like the bouncing car that just started bouncing like crazy, and like
it's a lot cleaner than it was.
It
However,
is.
My favorite one I ran into was I was sneaking. There was some gig, but I was sneaking around like some area, and I was snapping everybody's neck.
Yeah.
And these 2 guys in one room were talking to each other, and one went to the couch to watch TV, and the other went in the other room to work out. And I killed the guy watching TV, and I go in as the guy working out. Right as I'm about to sneak up on him, he goes and stands and starts doing deadlifts with this huge barbell. And I kill him, but the barbell's still stuck to the character model's hand, and it just starts bouncing him around the room. Like the physics on it have gone completely insane. It was bouncing everywhere. And he bounces through the door and all through the entire building. And of course, that counts as all the other enemies seeing a body. Right? He's just flying past them. And while the whole firefight's happening, he's still bouncing through the room attached to this giant barbell.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, that was one for the ages.
That's hilarious. Eric Cartman has asked, is 2.0 free? It is.
Yes.
It's totally free. Now, obviously, that doesn't include the DLC. You have to spend the extra $30 for that.
But the whole everything else.
But the 2.0 thing, as we talked about in last week's episode, is a huge upgrade.
Yeah.
So at the very least, make sure you download the 2.0 version.
Yeah, even without Phantom Liberty, it's a completely different experience.
Huge upgrade. Yep. So that's 2 thumbs up from GameFace for Phantom Liberty. Just amazing DLC. Once again, CD Projekt Red kind of showing the rest of the industry how it should be done. I'd much rather have something like this where you get like a huge chunk of DLC a couple years later than this little like, oh, here's a little bit of this, here's a little bit of that, here's, like for the 6 months after the game launches.
And just so you know, Bethesda, this is the level that Starfield's DLC has to be at.
Yeah, it's not gonna be.
It's probably not. But I mean, they've gotten Old World Blues, amazing.
No, they've done some good stuff.
They've had a couple of bangers.
I just don't think that they'll overhaul the base game like CD Projekt Red has.
I don't think that's possible. But you could argue they don't need to.
Yeah, it's just impossible.
They've made what they were going to make.
Yeah.
I will say that playing Cyberpunk again, even the base game stuff with all the upgrades, it really does highlight I have not played Starfield in 2 weeks because I've been busy.
That shows you right there.
Game.
If it got Matt to stop playing Starfield for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
that's all you need to hear.
By the way, a game that I was very disappointed by in the first place. Cyberpunk did not really hit for me before, and it's a much better game now.
It really is.
2.0 changes it completely for me. The fact that the perk trees and all the abilities you can get completely change the game. It's so much fun now.
Just like that.
It's fun. Like that's the thing. The story is still what it is. I still have my complaints about what is and isn't Cyberpunk in terms of what this is. But it's so much fun I don't care as much anymore. That's the key. And that's really what a game should be.
Agreed.
Entertainment. But even just the conversation between Idris Elba and the president in this, I was sitting there being like, you know what? Like just looking back and forth between these two characters as they talk to each other and act and argue with each other. And then I'm thinking about Starfield where it's just a bunch of Jedi drones staring right at the camera. Even when they're all supposed to be talking to each other, it's just cutting from one guy to the other, just staring right at the camera. And you're like, these games came out the same year.
Yeah.
Actually, Cyberpunk came out 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's some work to be done there, boys.
Yeah. Yep.
I hope Elder Scrolls can get there in a way that Starfield didn't.
I agree. So there you go. That's Cyberpunk 2077. Phantom Liberty. That's 2 thumbs up from GameFace. Next up, we're going to talk about a game that you're probably wondering why it was not in the housekeeping today. 'Cause you're like, wait, there's this huge story that happened this week, and where was it? And that is that Counter-Strike 2 just totally stealth launched on Steam out of nowhere. And there's some added intrigue to this because what Valve did with Counter-Strike 2 was that it just replaced Counter-Strike Go. So one, if you're a Counter-Strike Go player and all of a sudden this game you've been playing for the last 5 years is just gone and you're forced to play this new version, that's weird. But the other part is that Valve allowed Counter-Strike 2 to take over all the metrics of Counter-Strike Go. So all the user reviews for Counter-Strike Go, which the fans loved, have been put into Counter-Strike 2, which generally the fans do like, but not quite as much as Counter-Strike Go. And so people are like, wait a minute, like, I haven't actually reviewed Counter-Strike 2, but my review is appearing below Counter-Strike 2 on Steam, which is a little weird. Like, every once in a while, Valve does something like this where you're like, what? Like, that's out of character for Valve. Like,
yeah, although part of that could just be like, who fucking cares? Like, it's so minor and it's so, like...
But people do care, unfortunately.
Yeah, but like people care in the sense like, like no one cares if your integrity as a reviewer is not on the line here. It's just a weird thing they decided to do.
Well, they're just saying that like,
and if they'd wiped all the reviews, everyone would be whining about that too. Like,
I don't think so.
I think so. They'd be like, where'd my thing go? Now my Counter-Strike 2 Go opinion isn't preserved for posterity and the rest of human.
Oh, you mean if they wiped it instead of like?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They wiped all the reviews and.
Well, what they should have done is just left Counter-Strike Go there and started a new product page for Counter-Strike 2. Like,
then people would still be playing Counter-Strike Go.
No, they just take it off so you can't download it or play it anymore. Although you can still play.
Then why do you need reviews for something that doesn't exist?
That's a good point, actually. Although, because you can still play it like but only on like community servers. You can't play it on like official servers anyway. It's weird.
Again, not really something you need to worry about reviewing.
Yeah.
It's Counter-Strike.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. So I was like, I've never been a big Counter-Strike player.
Neither have I.
There was a period where I played it for a good bit, like after work at Game Trailers, because it was just a thing everybody was doing. And it only lasted like 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah, and I went through similar stages at G4.
I mean, well, G4, like, it was weird. I mean, there was a slight Counter-Strike period there, but like everybody went back to Day of Defeat. So Day of Defeat was like of the G4 people who were already here in LA when we moved here. Day of Defeat was their fucking drink of choice, and like none of us really understood it. But
yeah.
Like, all right. Yeah.
Well, I jumped in and started playing Counter-Strike 2 because again, it just stealth launched out of nowhere and was just available to play. And it is. I really struggle to figure out why it exists. It is.
What makes it 2?
That's what I'm getting at. I'm struggling to find out, or figure out what it is that makes it different. There isn't a lot. To me, it's really just like a slight graphical improvement, because it still isn't like a looker. It's not like one of the better games that you're going to see. It still is one of those games. I mean,
it does look better than Counter-Strike.
It does.
Though. I mean,
but
I can tell that.
Run on like rigs that are like 10, 12 years old just fine. In fact, it ran on mine just fine. A rig that's like 10 years old at this point. So it is still one of those games that will scale to pretty much anything that you have. But really, the only real improvements or changes to the game, other than graphical tweaks, is that there's like new smoke stuff. So one, smoke, people who don't play Counter-Strike may not realize how important smoke is to the game. You use smoke in so many different ways in this. A lot of times you use it to like create a choke point, or just to slow down the vision of the enemies, to keep enemies from camping on like the bomb set points.
I know how important dust is.
What do you mean?
That map.
Oh, the map dust. Yeah, it's huge. In fact, one of the big complaints is that dust is not in this yet.
That's the most surprising thing to me.
There's a couple modes that are missing that people are pissed off about. We'll get to that in a minute.
Like, if you're going to do the whole replacement thing, how do you not make sure that basically there's a replacement for everything?
Right, yep. Well, the Source Engine 2.0, which is actually what they say is why this is called Counter-Strike 2, not that it's actually a sequel, but it's built on Source Engine 2. I don't know if I believe that or not, but that's what they say.
I mean, that sounds dumb enough to be real.
For Valve in particular.
That sounds like something you'd think about internally and then like think it made sense to someone outside, and no.
Yeah. But using the new engine, it allows them to do this new smoke stuff. And
why don't you call it Counter-Strike 2.0 then?
Right, that's what it should be. But the smoke stuff is kind of cool. Like, you can shoot through the smoke and it will create a hole in the smoke that you can then see through.
That's neat.
You can also throw a grenade, and the blast radius of the grenade will blow the smoke away.
And things, yeah.
So there's some cool stuff in there, but that is to me, again, not as a gigantic Counter-Strike player, that to me is really the only noticeable thing that I really can see that had really changed that much.
Why not call it Counter-Strike Source, except it's 2 for the S and Source.
Right. Oh yeah, that'd be pretty clever. But the loot boxes, the rank up system, the maps are all still the same. Now again, they have made some of the maps look better graphically, but their layout is identical, to the pixel. The layout is identical. And I get that because people have been playing some of these maps for ever, and there's certain sight lines. If you play Call of Duty long enough, you learn that window in that house, if I go upstairs, gives me a sight line to this other part of the map.
Bruin Killer is really being a problem.
Oh, dude, I just got annihilated in this game. First of all, people may not remember this, but in Counter-Strike, you can only aim down sights if your gun has a scope. Every other gun, you can't aim, you hip fire it. You can't fire aiming down the sight. So it's hard to be accurate. You have to basically anticipate the flow of combat so that you are standing perfectly still or crouched perfectly still. And the longer you stand still, the tighter your reticle gets, which means the more accurate that your gunfire is. And it takes, if you're used to playing every other shooter, it takes a while to get used to playing Counter-Strike. In my first,
I think your team let you down there.
Yeah. My first, 20 matches of this, I just got annihilated. And then I started getting a little better at it to where I could actually be competitive. And, I was actually finishing close to, even with deaths and kills. But my first few matches of this, I would finish 6 kills and 25 deaths. The other thing I would say too, and I don't know if this has changed from Counter-Strike Go, but if you play Team Deathmatch in this, the spawning is insane. You literally spawn and get shot in the back within 3 seconds constantly. Again, I had not played this game seriously in so long. It was a huge wake-up call for me. But otherwise, everything else is the same. You start the game, you go to a loadout screen, you only have a certain number of credits, you pick whatever gun you can pick to start the match. As you play the match and you get kills, you earn credits that you can then spend to use to get a better gun when you die. And so the idea is that as the match wears on, you keep getting better and better weapons, which makes you better, which helps you get more kills, which hopefully helps turn the tide if your team is losing, blah, blah, blah. All that has been a part of Counter-Strike all along. It's still the same here. None of it has really changed. There are a couple other minor tweaks that most people won't even notice, and I didn't notice until I actually did some research on the game. You can now buy multiple models of the same gun while in game. It used to be there was just one MP4 or whatever. Now there's multiple versions of some of the guns, and you can choose them in your loadout in game. There's also this new thing called playing cards. Where each kill in a round adds up to a max of 5 playing cards that you can have. It used to be called in the original Counter-Strike basically having an ace, and so that's where the whole card thing comes from. But it's not even really tied into your performance in the game at all. It's really just this cosmetic fun thing that they've added. I mentioned earlier there was another mode that they removed that has people angry. It's called Arms Race, which is basically the gun game in Counter-Strike. In gun game, if you remember in Call of Duty, you get a different gun every time you spawn. You start out with a pistol, and as the game goes on, by the end, you have this crazy awesome weapon that you use. It was very popular in Counter-Strike Go. They've removed it and have not put it back in yet. They have added weapon customization, which is something, again, that wasn't in Counter-Strike Go, so that's a change. There's 2 new maps, and then, as I said, they reworked the visuals on all the old maps. Matches are still way too long. They have cut them down a little bit. Each match now is 12 rounds instead of 16. But still, each match takes 30 to 45 minutes to complete. It's just way too long for something that doesn't change. It's League of Legends matches, they go 30, 40 minutes or even an hour if it's a really good match. But they change. That game is built that the first 20 minutes, you do this certain thing and you're all in your own lanes and you try to win your lane, and the 20-minute mark, your jungler starts coming into your lane and trying to it changes over time. In this, it's just kill or be killed for 40 minutes straight or whatever. It can be really tough, particularly if you're on a bad team and you're getting your butt kicked, to not just quit, honestly. And that happened a lot in this, where people by the time you get to the end of the match, you're getting your butt kicked and there's only 5 guys left on your team because everybody else is, or less, because everyone else has quit. So I think the matches are way too long. But again, these are tenets of Counter-Strike that people are just not going to be okay if they're removed. And so I feel like this is not going to appeal to a new audience. This is going to mostly appeal to the old Counter-Strike players, although even they're kind of pissed off already. But I'll say this, they already have 1.5 million daily players playing Counter-Strike 2, so they must not be all that pissed off about it.
Well, what else are you going to do?
Yeah. How do you feel about that, Matt? Do you think that they should change more to games like this over time and then just keep the old Counter-Strike up there? Like, that seems to make more sense to me.
I don't know. Like, I understand why you maybe want to replace it, because, like, how could you ever pull people away from this thing they played for 20 years?
Yeah, but then doesn't that say that you should keep it up and then just replace, like, put up Counter-Strike 2 as a new product and leave the old one up?
No, because you're not making any money off that old product, so you just replace it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand from a financial perspective. I'm talking more from, like, keeping the fans happy and that type of thing.
Yeah, who cares?
You're right, though. They don't care. Because
I mean, that's what they're thinking. Like,
well, I guess maybe they look at the metric of if people are spending money, then they're happy.
What are they going to do? Play something else?
Right. If they've been playing this for 20 years, you're right. And the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of people who are complaining about this game, and then they'll go on a tirade about all the details of it, which shows you that they're playing the game.
Yeah.
Which, if you're Valve, mission accomplished, right?
Yeah.
But I guess I'll say this, Counter-Strike 2 hasn't changed my perspective on Counter-Strike. I still am not very good at it. It still is very frustrating to me. Like, I don't like a game where you have to, like, sit still to, like, shoot accurately. Like, right there was a perfect example. In any other shooter, I would have killed that guy. Uh-huh. Literally, in any other shooter, that dude would be dead. I come around a corner, he's standing with his back turned to me, but because I'm moving and hip firing, not enough of my bullets hit him, and so he turns around and is able to kill me.
Right, but that's exactly why they can replace this. Because there's nothing else like that right now in the modern world.
It's true. Well, it's like I said, if I played any other shooter, I would have got the kill there.
So they're stuck.
You're right.
If you want to, if this is how you like your shooter to play, this is what you got to play.
Yeah. Well, there is Valorant now, which is like Riot's kind of take on Counter-Strike, and it is actually, I'm surprised how it has kind of created its own little market there. It's doing pretty well.
But people are in this. Valorant's a little too, I think, cartoony.
It is, yeah.
Compared to like if you're like you play a lot of Counter-Strike, people's like, this is my serious operative game kind of thing. It's like, so
you're right.
Yeah, I think you're stuck.
Yeah, I think you're right. So did I have fun playing Counter-Strike 2? Maybe a little. Does it look better than Counter-Strike 1? Definitely. Does it play that much different than Counter-Strike 1? No, it really doesn't. Does it have all the features of Counter-Strike 1 right now? No, it does not. They're still struggling to get all those features in. And according to Valve, their priorities are not right now to get all that stuff in that people are missing. There's still other new features that they're trying to get into Counter-Strike 2.
Like what?
I don't even know. They need them, though. They need more new in this, particularly if you're going to call it Counter-Strike 2.
The smoke like physics tricks are neat.
And it does make a difference in the actual gameplay, for sure. Because in the past, you had no recourse. If there was a smoke grenade there, you just weren't going to see that doorway for the next minute, basically.
Yeah, you really want to change the game, add fans.
It's like a deployable.
Portable fan.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah. So I did play some Valorant. I played it for like 2 days. I didn't like it for the same reason I don't like Counter-Strike. Like, the aiming is weird. Mm-hmm. There's a very specific feeling. And I will say this, Valorant does capture that same feeling that you get in Counter-Strike. I just don't like it.
Yeah, it's a very specific way of wanting to play this.
Yeah.
And it either clicks with you or it doesn't.
Yeah. So again, take my opinion with a grain of salt. I have never been a huge fan of Counter-Strike in the past, and I don't like this either. But that doesn't mean that if you are a fan of Counter-Strike, that you won't like this. I think generally, if you liked Counter-Strike, you're going to like this. You may not love it right away, but I also have a feeling that eventually Valve is going to get it to a place where you will love it. It's Valve. Like, it generally does not drop the ball on stuff like this.
You will learn to love it.
All right. You'll slowly forget all the stuff that you're missing from the earlier games.
It will be like it was always what you played.
Exactly.
You can barely even remember that other game.
Exactly.
What was its name? Nobody knows.
No one remembers. So anyway, there you go. That's Counter-Strike 2. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it is generally a pretty simple game. But I will say this too. It does benefit from the fact that it does have all that content already. So it has all those maps and all those weapons and all the stuff that it took 20 years for Counter-Strike to build up. The vast majority of it is there. So it's not like you're jumping into a brand new shooter and starting over where they have like 5 maps and they only have like 10 weapons or whatever. All that content from the prior Counter-Strikes, it's all there. So if you do get into it and you do enjoy it, there's plenty of content to play through. And again, I do have faith in Valve that eventually it will get all the features that you're missing into Counter-Strike 2. All right, it's time to tackle the last game of GameFace 360. And actually, man, I'm not even sure if you played this or not.
I have not.
You did not play it. So there is an indie game right now that is getting perfect 10s and 9s pretty much across the board from everyone who's reviewing it. It is a game called Cocoon, and it completely caught me off guard. Matt, were you familiar with this game at all?
No. If Wilford Brimley's not in it, I don't care.
I think you might care about this one, Matt.
That's an 80s movie reference.
Yeah, which nobody got but me.
No, I've heard of this. It's interesting. I didn't get around to it, though.
Yep, so this is the first game from a studio called Geometric Interactive. And basically, the lead designer from Limbo and Inside left and started his own studio. And this is their first game. And I would argue that this game is far better than either Limbo or Inside. And I know those are big words. As far as people who enjoy playing indie games, smaller games, those are two big ones. I
would actually say that Inside is one of the most overrated games I've played in the last 10 years. I liked Limbo a lot, but I did not think Inside was all that compelling for what it was.
I'll be honest with you, I thought Limbo was overrated when I played it. I played it later after it had already received all its accolades and everything, and I was kind of like wondering like what the big deal was.
I mean, I just think Inside, I don't understand what people thought was so amazing about that game. It was just another out of this world clone to me. And like, at the end, a weird thing happens, but it's like, okay, and like, it was not as profound as Kotaku would like me to believe. Let's put it
or Polygon.
Polygon, yeah. I'm sorry, Eurogamer. It was not what I was here for.
Highly recommended, Matt.
This looks more like my speed, though. This is interesting.
Yep. So this game, you start out as a moth, or is it a cicada? I'm not quite sure.
Looked like a cicada to me.
You start in a cocoon, and the game starts. You just come out of the cocoon, and you're dropped into this world. And
although I don't know what. I mean, moths do have cocoons. The others have chrysalises.
Right. Butterflies have chrysalis.
Yeah.
And then moths have cocoons.
And cicadas are just sleeping.
Well, they also have those husks that they come out of, though.
Yeah, but they pupate.
Right.
So cocoon implies moth.
Right. So I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it looks more like a cicada, I think. I don't know. Regardless, it can't fly. Because if it could fly,
so you're a shitty moth.
Pretty much, yeah. Because if it could fly, the design of this game would just be trashed. Because everything is about figuring out how to get from one place to another using the powers that you have, basically. And you play as this moth. The game starts. You come out of your cocoon. There's no direction or goals given or anything. There's no setup. There's no text that tells you like what you're supposed to do, what the goal is. You just come out of the cocoon, and it's just like figure it out. And that's where the brilliance of this game comes in, is that it just somehow manages to teach you what you want to do, what the goal is, how to do it, and it does it all with one button. This game plays with an analog stick or the D-pad and one button. And it really, I mean, at its heart, it's a puzzle platformer. And I'll be honest, like there's a couple times playing this where I got stumped on a puzzle and I thought the game was broken. I was like, oh, they just had bad QA on this. There's no way. Like, I need to reset this puzzle and start again. No. And what happened was I started thinking to myself, look, if there's just one button in this game, like, I can figure it out. And so you just start going around experimenting with the one button, and you figure out which things you can interact with, and then which objects that thing can interact with in the world, and you just start figuring it out. Now, I'll say this. Like, there were two puzzles where I did need help. Like, I went on the internet and, like, searched for help on them because I just got stuck and I felt like I had tried everything. And I'll say this, when I got the solutions, I regretted going online and getting the solutions for them because I was like, duh. Like, I smacked myself on the forehead and was like, come on, man, you could have figured that out, Shane. And, you know, a lot of that just depends on maybe you're having a rough night or you're short on time. Like, all that stuff plays into it or whatever. But there was 2 times where I got too frustrated and went and looked for help, and I regretted it once I figured out what the solution to the puzzles were. So if you end up playing this, like, stick with it as much as you can. Try to figure it out on your own, because that's what's really rewarding about this game. What you very quickly figure out is that the only goal is to keep moving forward. And you don't know what you're moving forward to. You just know that that's what you need to do. It's very much like an insect, where they're born and no one talks to them and teaches them what they need to do. They just do it. They watch the other insects around them, or it's just ingrained in them what their life's mission is. And that this game somehow, when you're the player of this, you feel like that insect. It's bizarre. I don't even know how to put it into words. The way it teaches you what you need to do, where you need to go, what the goal is, and that the goal really is that there is no goal. Let's see. Again, it is an environmental puzzle platformer. You've already seen me like picking up orbs. That is a big part of this game. It's like picking up an orb and figuring out almost like there's almost like some Metroid-like sections to this game where you have this orb and you need to put it into this tube and you need to figure out how like to change the directions of the tubes to get it to where you want. And then there's also other elements of Metroid in this where sometimes you come across like a pathway and you're like, I have no idea how to use that pathway or get through that pathway. And then you learn something a little later on and you come back and you know exactly how to access that new pathway. And then the orbs, they play a bigger role as well. Eventually, you get to places where you'll place the orb and it will create almost like a reflecting pool. And if you activate that reflecting pool, it will take you to another world. And that is where the game's puzzles really start to get devilish. So this is one of those games where it's like a world inside a world inside a world. It starts out very simple. You have the world that you're in right now, and you get to your first reflecting pool, and you go into that other world. You find this little creature in the other world. You come back into your world. You find out that that little creature can like lower these barriers that you were incapable of lowering before. So you lower that barrier. Eventually you get to the next place where you use the orb and you have the reflecting pool. And then you're going through 3 different worlds trying to solve the puzzle to learn how to go forward in the 3rd world. And it just starts compounding and stacking on top of itself until, like, there was times where I was like, is my brain going to break playing this? But then you figure it out, and it's so rewarding when you finally figure out what the game is trying to have you do. There's lots of switches to flip that move platforms. You've seen that in the B-roll already. And then, you know, at first, like what you're seeing right now, I'm trying to figure out how to get the orb from one area to another. So I'm like using this series of tubes, and then, I got to get over here and I need to flip this switch just in time for the ball to go down through this. These areas are prevalent throughout the entire game pretty much. What else can I say about this game? So I know I'm talking about how it's like world upon world upon world, and you have to figure out how what you do in one affects the others. It can become confusing. One thing that helps is that each world is color-coded. And I think, honestly, if that were not the case, I don't think I could have played this game. I think it would have driven me batty. But having like each area color-coded helps your brain kind of organize the clues that the game is giving you and then sort them out and use them to eventually make progress through the game. Again, like this, it's hard to explain when playing this game. It's almost like it teaches you through osmosis how to make progress through it. I don't know if I can explain it without somebody playing it. But all I can say is how it made me feel when I played through the game and started solving some of the puzzles. Also, there's other orbs in the game that aren't just used like this, where you place it and it unlocks like something, or it creates like the reflecting pool. There's some orbs that, while you carry them, they give you special powers. One of them reveals invisible walkways. There's another one that can turn like gas to solids and vice versa. There's another one that creates like water spouts that you can jump on and they'll like send you up into the sky. And so there's different orbs that you use, and those aren't quite as flexible. Those are generally like context sensitive. This is the first reflecting pool, and this is the first time you'll get to see me going to the other world. So you put the orb in the center, you get the reflecting pool, you hold the single button, and then it'll transport you to that other world, basically. And then you fly to the other world, and then this is where I find the little critter and then I go back through the portal again, and then I use the critter back in the other world, and this is like the first one. This is where it's real simple and easy to figure out. What is the world upon the world upon the world is where it starts to get a little bit more confusing, and also, consequently, a lot more rewarding when you finally do solve the puzzles. Again, like, knowing that the game is played with just one button and the analog stick, it changes how you look at the game and the puzzles. And again, the game plays on that. Like, it knows that you know that there's very simple controls in the game, that there's very specific things that you can do, and kind of establishing what the player is capable of shapes how the player ultimately plays the game and tries to tackle all the puzzles. I don't know. I feel like this game, for me personally, as someone who has played a lot of games, really tested my expectations for what video games can be. And I can't say that about... don't know the last time that I played a game that made me feel this way. And generally, they are smaller indie games that do this, so I'm not surprised that it's a game like this that did it. But it literally made me think about how could the concepts in this be applied to a bigger budget game, or just a bigger game in general, or a game with higher production values and cinematics and things like that. How can this template work? And I don't know that it can, honestly. I don't know that it works in the context of the big budget AAA game with a bunch of voice acting and cinematics and things like that. I think it only kind of works in a game like this.
And that's fine.
It is totally fine. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I came off... This game also, I should add, it's only like 4 or 5 hours long. Mm-hmm. It's $25, but right now you can buy it on Steam for $5 off for $20. And I'm cool with this at $25 because, again, like, we need to reward developers who make games like this so that they keep making games like this that push the boundaries of what you expect from playing games. And I know you're looking at this B-roll and you're like, what the hell is Shane talking about? You got to play it. It is on Game Pass right now, by the way. So if you're a Game Pass subscriber, you can download this for free and play it. All the reviews for this, 9 or above. And having played it, I totally agree. This is definitely in the running for Indie Game of the Year. And I may have to even consider it for Game of the Year, although this is a tough year for something like this to try to make a mark in that way. But definitely it's on my hot list for Indie Game of the Year already. And it's one of those games where it's like, when you're not playing it, you're doing something else, you're still thinking about the game, and you come up with like an idea, and you're like, I wonder if I could do X, Y, or Z. And then when you get back to playing the game, you try it, and you can. Those are great games to me. Games that give that provide that much latitude for free thinkers to find new ways to try to do things and accomplish goals. There just aren't enough games like that. There are no enemies in this game. You can't attack. You just have one button. And it's never to it. Well, that's not true. So the first boss fight in this is on a platform, and the objective is there's like this bee that's on the platform, and it's leaving these trails behind him or whatever, and there's this orb that's below the dirt. So the first thing you need to do is you need to grab the orb and pull it up from under the dirt, and then you can use it to kind of attack the bee with. And then later on, there's ones where there's a boss fight where like it's laying down tracks and you have to avoid the tracks. It's almost like the Tron Cycles mode from the Tron arcade game. It's kind of like that. So it finds very clever ways to have battles with other enemies without there actually being really any combat in the game. You're trying to like outsmart them or out-trick them, not necessarily kill them, although by default, they generally end up kind of killing themselves. Yeah, kind of the objective is to like fool enemies into harming themselves. That's kind of how the combat and the boss battles work in this. And generally the boss battles pop up at the end of every area. Again, they're all color-coded, or the end of every world, or whatever you want to call them. And so there's like a handful of boss fights ultimately in this game. But just everything about this game feels incredibly clever, incredibly smart. Like, this is one of those games that I played where I was like, I could never make this game. Like, could I make a game, like, if I had a good team, like Cyberpunk 2077 or Horizon? Probably. Could I make another God of War? Probably. Would it be as good as what they're making? Probably not. But I could make the game. I could never make this game. Never. Like, the guy who designed this game is way smarter than me. That's just the truth. Like, I could not make this. And it is a joy to play things from people who are as smart as the dude that made this game, because it really is. It just, over and over again, it just surprises. And there's some hidden stuff in the game to find, although generally I would say this game doesn't have much replay value. it's like once you figured it out, you've kind of figured it out. They don't switch things up if you play through it again. But again, there are some hidden collectibles here and there that you can find. So if you're someone who wants to get like all the trophies or all the achievements, you'll probably get a little bit more time out of this trying to ferret out the secrets in the world. But as someone who just played it kind of straight through and found stuff here and there, like it took me 4 or 5 hours to complete, and I was totally fine with it at the $20 that it costs. And again, it is on Game Pass. So if you're a subscriber there, you don't have to plug down any extra money. It's just sitting there waiting for you to download, and I highly recommend that you do. And Matt, I highly recommend that you play this game. I know it may be hard right now with October, and for all you guys, it may be hard with October, but like you have a few days here before Assassin's Creed Mirage comes out. If you're a Game Pass subscriber, I highly recommend going and downloading this right now. Even if you're not, go to Steam, spend the $20 for it. If you buy it on other platforms, and it is on everything, it's going to cost you an extra $5. Again, totally worth it at $25. I would have no qualms with that at all. So, really blown away by this game. Really impressed by this game. Like, I wouldn't even have played it, honestly, if it weren't for the reviews. Like, here's the boss fight, by the way, the first boss fight, so you can see kind of how they work. But if it weren't for the reviews, I wouldn't even have given this game a chance. So this is one case where, like, the reviewers got it right, and I'm glad that they did, and it turned me on to a new game, and I hope that I'm passing it on to you guys right now so that you guys will play it and pass it on as well and give it a go. And if you like it, tell your friends and maybe have your significant other play it or whatever. That's the other thing, too, is, like, this game, I think, will appeal to anyone. Mm-hmm. Like, your significant other, whether it's a guy or a girl or whatever, I think everyone can enjoy this game. There are a couple points that are pretty tough, and you may get frustrated. I'm not going to judge you if you go online and find the answer like I did. But I will say this, try to figure it out on your own, because I ultimately regretted going and getting the answers online. Once I found out what the answers were, I was like, oh, I should have figured that out on my own. So anyway, there you go. It's Cocoon. It's available for PC, both PlayStations, both Xboxes, and Switch. It's $25 on consoles. It's $20 on Steam right now. I don't know how long that $5 off is going to last, but you should jump on it while you can. Do you have any questions about it, Matt?
Not really. Seems fairly straightforward, oddly enough.
Yeah, and as you see, like when you die in these boss fights, they just send you right back to the last like reflection pool. So you don't have to go too far to jump back in the fight. Now, it doesn't remember what you did. So like most video games, you have to hit the boss 3 times. Like if you hit him twice and then die, you don't have to go back and hit him once. You have to go back and start the whole boss fight over again, but it's not that big a deal. None of them take all that long. It's really more about figuring out what you should do versus like having to actually do it. So it's kind of like one of those games where it's more about thinking than actually doing. But there you go. That's Cocoon. I highly recommend it already. One of the best indie games of 2023. So if you're into that kind of stuff, jump on it. You won't regret it. I don't see anything in chat either. Noxatornitis again, thank you for Twitch Prime. That's awesome. El Guapo says, maybe not my gaming mod for now, but I'll try later this year. Yeah, this is one of those games that maybe if there's a lull, looks like December is going to have a pretty good lull. There's only a couple of big games coming in December. Or maybe even like late November, it gets a little thin in the release calendar. Mm-hmm. Might be a game to kind of bookmark, or you can follow it on Sifted, and then anytime something is published or curated about it, it will pop up to the top of your Sift as a reminder that you should play it later on in the year. But I fully expect this game to be discussed again in a few months when the Game of the Year stuff rolls around, and at the very least for Indie Game of the Year. So, think you're going to give it a go, Matt?
Yeah, I'll try it.
Yeah. All right. And I'll be interested to hear what you think of it, too, once you give it a go. And with that, it's time for... That's right, people. It's time for Name That Game, where I show you 5 screenshots from a video game, and you try to guess the name of that game before Matt Kyle. Couple things before we get going, and I'm going to bring this up again. If you have won already this year, do not play. We had somebody play a couple weeks ago and who had already won and did not share that when he won or she won. So if you've already won this year, do not play. You can only win once per calendar year. Number 2, the chat goes on slow mode. So don't just spam the chat with a bunch of random game titles hoping that you guess it right, because you get one every 60 seconds, and it would really suck if that next screenshot you know exactly what it is and you can't put it into chat. So make sure that you are only guessing when you have a good idea on what the game might be. And what's the third one? I forgot the third one this time.
What?
The third rule of Name That Game.
What did you list? Don't play if you already won.
Yep.
Chat's in slow mode.
Yep. What's the third one? Every once in a while, I forget the third one. If you won't play PC games. Yeah.
Right.
If you don't play PC games, or you don't know somebody who plays PC games who you can give the code to, also don't play, because when you win a free game, and if you're not going to play the PC games, then that's what the codes are for. Don't ruin it for somebody else who might actually play that game. So that's it. Those are our 3 rules of Name That Game, and we're just about ready to get going here. My prediction...
And now you know I completely zone out when you do that, because I don't need to know any of that.
So anyway, my prediction is... This one will only make it to the second screenshot. That's my guess. We'll see. Last week I thought we'd make it to the 4th one, and they guessed it in like 3 seconds. So I'm not very good at guessing when you guys are going to get them right. So anyway, here we go with Name That Game. Here is the first screenshot. No guesses yet. I even feared that this one might give it away. Fallout New Vegas, no. Ark, no. That's a good one. Shadow of the Colossus, no. Uncharted 3, no. Metal Gear Solid 3, no. Half-Life 2, no. Another Fallout New Vegas. The sand is what's prompting you guys to think that's what it is. Eco, no. Grand Theft Auto 5, no.
Subnautica.
Not Subnautica. That's also a good guess, though. Any other guesses before we move on to the second screenshot? Mad Max, no. Also a good guess with the sand. Seaman from Too Quick Capri, no, but that's another good guess. Rage 2, no. We're getting all the sand games. What's left? It's not it.
That's left.
Sandland, that game that hasn't come out yet.
I'm blanking on it. It's the stupid... The fucking military game that everybody thinks is so profound because you white phosphorus a bunch of civilians.
Oh, the third-person shooter that was all controversial.
Because it's incredibly boring until that happens.
Spore, no. Xenoblade Chronicles, no. Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball, good guess, that Saber, but no. Nox Anarnitis, I hate sand. Spyro 3, no. Spec Ops The Line. Yeah, GM Rain supplied us with that. No, it's not Spec Ops The Line. No. But you're right, that had a lot of sand in it too. Okay, I think that's it. All right, we're going to make it to screenshot number 2, and I really think this one's going to give it away, but we'll see. And here it is. I think someone will get it. Maneater, no, but that's a good guess, Eric Cartmenez.
Oh, Abzu.
Not Abzu. That's a really good guess, though. I always wonder if I should go obscure more with these and try to go more with indie games and stuff like that. Yeah. Star Fox Adventures, nope. That's a pretty good guess.
Clearly, there is no problem with depth of game knowledge.
Yeah, you're right. Pikmin, no. Far Cry 3, no. Final Fantasy, Icarus 0. You have to name the Final Fantasy. Maybe you're guessing the first Final Fantasy, but when you guess these, you have to give the exact number of the franchise. Just a heads up. Far Cry 3, no. Final Fantasy, no. Subnautica, no. Avatar, no. By the way, these are always going to be games that are already out, just so you know. Insert Coin Games, thank you for subscribing at Tier 1, man. That's awesome. Or girl.
I mean, there is an Avatar game.
But, well, you're right. There is one. But that's... How old is that now?
When did Avatar
10 years
come out?
ago? 10 years old, yeah.
That's like 13 years.
Yeah. It's not Avatar. Oh, wow. We may make it past the second screenshot. I really thought that was going to give it away. But nope. Okay. Here comes screenshot number 3. And here it is. Yeah. Well, I mean... Ghost of Tsushima, no. I just learned a Ghost of Tsushima. No. I mean, it's the Sky. The Sky can give away a lot. Kingdom Hearts 3, no, but that's a good guess. Halo 3, no. Xenoblade Chronicles X, no. Final Fantasy 9, no. The Outer Worlds, no, but that's a good guess too. I have a feeling when I give the answer to this, people are going to kick themselves. BioShock Infinite, no. Xenoblade 2, no. Last Guardian, no. Wow, I'm surprised. All right.
Halo Reach.
Nope. It's not. Skyward Sword, no, but that's a really good guess, Chevelle Man 1979. Okay. Anthem. No, not Anthem.
Okami.
Not Okami. I could see why you would guess that, though. Are we going to the 4th screenshot? Twilight Princess, no. Sea of Thieves, no. I think we're going to the 4th screenshot, people. Skies of Arcadia, no. That's a good guess. Mm-hmm. Dreamcast RPG. All right. I think that's it. All right, here we go to screenshot 4. I can't believe this. Here we go. Here it is. Killzone Shadowfall, no. No Man's Sky, no. Come on, you guys got to get it from this one. We have a winner. Erebus Jones with World of Warcraft. I can't believe it took so long. A lot of Kingdom Hearts 3s. Yep, it is World of Warcraft. Can you see it now? No? And then here's the 5th one. Which definitely would have given it away. Look at bottom left there.
I mean, yeah, that's Warcraft tech, I guess.
Yeah. So anyway...
It also could be any MMO since World of Warcraft came out. I mean, they've ripped that style of architecture off for everything elf-related since
But with the totality of the other screenshots is what I'm saying. Like, it all adds
I don't
up.
recognize any of that as Warcraft.
Interesting.
Like, I don't...
It's cartoony art style, yeah.
Yeah, but everything looks like that. There's nothing... I mean, I think I've seen that Lily Pond before, but like, yeah, I wouldn't recognize any of that.
Okay.
Well,
Erebus Jones did.
I might have guessed World of Warcraft in that final one, just because it looks like the elf.
Oh, you definitely would have guessed it once you saw the bottom left. That insignia is like it's World of Warcraft basically. Here's another round of applause for Erebus Jones, cause.
And Drellock says the ghouls on the bottom right gave it away, but I can't see that from here.
Oh,
so
yep.
That monitor is dark, and there's a tripod in the way.
Yeah, our monitor here, it's dark. It's hard to see. It's a little far away. But first of all, Erebus Jones, it's good to see a sifter like you win. Erebus is a regular on the site like you all should be. But he's really an important part of our community, and I love seeing people like that win. So congratulations once again. Erebus, you know how to get in touch with me. We communicate all the time on the site. So just hit me up, send me a message as a reminder, and I'll get you your free code. And congratulations once again. And with that, we actually have some time for some Q&A in this week's episode, something we haven't really been able to do for a couple episodes. I think last week we squeezed in 2 questions and we shouldn't have. It ended up making the show over by like 5 minutes. But we have about 10 minutes to answer your questions, so if you got them, get them into the chat. As always, go at Sifted Games so it makes it easier for us to see them. And let me pull you guys up here so everybody else can see what you're asking. This is for Vidya Games. Thank you for Twitch Prime, man. That's awesome. JM Rain, thank you for Twitch Prime. JM Rain, thank you for gifting all the subs, man. That's awesome. Thank you. And I think I saw Listeved also gifted some subs. So thank you for that as well. Also, by the way, the owner of LS Cream, our main man at LS Cream. Big thanks to his sponsorship. Let's see. What else we got here? From Listeved. Why can't they make Spider-Man 2 players?
They can.
Why didn't they?
They didn't want to.
Yeah. Why do you think that they made that decision?
I think they realize that it's going to be stronger as a single-player game with enhanced, like, seeing the other Spider-Man stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, I certainly speculated they might do a co-op thing back when after the first game came out and it became clear that Miles was going to be the future of the franchise there. But they've decided that that's not the way they want to go.
Yeah.
So
okay.
That's just a creative choice. They could have, I'm sure.
Okay. I mean, I would like to play it cooperatively. I think it'd be cool to have 2 people out in the open world and like being able to call each other, be like, I need help, and I run over and like help you out on some battle that you're having, and then maybe we join up and I don't know. I think it could be fun.
I'd rather they focus on making the strongest single player game they can.
Okay.
Because otherwise you're taking, now you got to make it go online. Now you got to be able to like have it play online. It's like it adds a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
That I would probably use for 10 minutes and never touch again.
Okay.
I think this stuff where you can go jump in on a random crime and the other Spider-Man is sometimes there already doing stuff and you team up and do stuff. I think that's way cooler than playing with another player.
So it's more surprising for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. El Guapo 3385. Which dev made the biggest pivot in terms of quality, genre, etc. from one game to the next? I think Guerrilla shifting from Killzone to Horizon is the first one that comes to mind for me. Conversely, I'll also add Lionhead for the dip in quality from Fable 2 to Fable 3.
I mean, Guerrilla's a strong one.
I mean, I think all studios get better with every game, but which one had like the most drastic jump up? I think a lot of times that occurs when you're changing generations and the studio gets access to better tools, better engine, better hardware.
I mean, Witcher 2 to Witcher 3 is
it's gigantic. It's like gigantic. Yeah. I mean, but you look at CD Projekt Red, like then from Witcher 3 to Cyberpunk, a lot of people would say that was probably a parallel or a sidestep.
Lateral move at best. Yeah. But like, that's a big leap was to Witcher 3.
Yeah. I think Rare's, when it went from making 2D games to 3D games, that was a huge leap for Rare. Yeah. Rare was just 1 in a billion when it was making 2D games, and then it went to 3D. It quickly became one of the preeminent developers in the entire industry.
Yeah, although I would argue that, I don't like the Donkey Kong Country games very much, but I think there's a lot of people who would argue that GoldenEye is about on par with Donkey Kong Country. I mean, that Rare was just making excellent things constantly, whereas I would say Killzone was not excellent.
That's a nice way of putting it. But I think in general, most developers get better.
For me, Naughty Dog going from Crash garbage to Uncharted 1 that's
a big leap.
A huge,
it also
huge
just such a huge shift in tone as well. I mean, you can say that about Insomniac as well. Like, it went from making these cutesy platformer games to making some more serious games and moving on to Spider-Man, and then the biggest dip down may have been Fuse or whatever.
Fuse was a
Insomniac's bad game.
Bad choice.
Yeah. That was a dip down for sure.
Yeah. Hell, you could say Disruptor to Ratchet.
That's true.
Their first game, Disruptor, and then you jump to it's a big
leap
change.
too. Yeah, there's lots of instances of that. That's a really good question, El Guapo. Thank you, man. Let's see. Swanland, what is your favorite game simply based on moment-to-moment gameplay? Well, I guess I would not want to admit this because I know you guys will hate me for it, but probably for me, just being honest, it's probably Call of Duty. Because of just the fact that I've played it so much for so many years in a row, I must really like it. That's all I can figure. So for me, it's probably got to be Call of Duty. What about you, Matt?
I don't know how to answer that question, really.
Just the moment-to-moment, just to feel how it plays. Is there any game that really is, what about Destiny 2? The headshots and stuff in that feel really good.
But, I don't know. There's other games that do other things better. I don't have a pick for that.
Okay. Mega Drive guy, thank you for Twitch Prime. That's awesome. 34 months, 4-month streak.
And honestly, the real answer to that is probably Tetris for everybody.
Oh, I think you're probably right. Actually, that's a good point. The Legacy. Why are Steam games cheaper if Valve takes 30%, just like Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, and console game sales are better? Well, the reason the Steam games are cheaper is because they don't sell as well as consoles. They need to incentivize you with discounts, whereas on console they don't. And I would argue a big part of that is because there are so many more games available for PC than there are for consoles. Every month on PC, there's 150 games released. At this point on consoles, there's 15 released every month. The number of games released for consoles has just fallen through the floor. So that's what I would say. What do you think, Matt?
I mean, that's probably it. Also, if you can even find the games on Steam through all the porn they put up now.
No, you're right.
Just digging through the upcoming releases section, it's just where are the actual games, please? This is
it needs better filtering options.
Yeah, this is Nintendo eShop level garbage.
Yeah. Or, all the shops are kind of that way now. PlayStation's isn't any better, man.
PlayStation's got some bad, but at least PlayStation usually has a section that, a little horizontal section is the main upcoming stuff people care about.
Yeah.
But you go to the looking around to see if Mirage was going to be on Steam. Steam's not really any help on that because just because I don't see it doesn't mean it's not on there because it's buried under a bunch of crap.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Eric Carmenas asked who the backup QB for Pittsburgh is. It doesn't matter because, as it turns out, the Steelers starter is not really injured. He's going to be able to play next week, even though he went out of the game acting like he had blown out his ACL. As it turns out, he was barely even injured. So that's really encouraging. Toonmatic, what's your favorite console of all time, Matt?
Probably the 360.
It's close for me. It's my favorite 3D console.
Yeah.
Favorite 2D, probably Super Nintendo.
Favorite 2D, probably Saturn.
Saturn, which was a hybrid, I guess. But really, it was
all
2D.
the best stuff on that is 2D.
Yep. Zed Saber Juno, straight fries, crinkle fries, or waffle fries?
Curly fries.
Yeah, you forgot curly fries, which are good only because they're always seasoned differently. Why is that?
I don't know.
Why do they season curly fries differently from other fries?
I don't know, but everybody else could learn from that.
Yep. I like straight fries the most. Yeah. So like McDonald's fries, I think are probably the best as long as you eat them while they're hot. And then they're like awful if they're cold.
I would rank curly fries, waffle fries, crinkle fries, straight fries. I think straight. Although I do like McDonald's fries best.
Yeah. Again, when they're hot.
Yeah. Well, cold fries are not.
They're just bad in general.
Yeah.
Yep. You can't really
that's just a cold potato.
Yeah, it is. You can't reheat French fries. They always are awful. MK Ness, with comeback stories like Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky, is re-reviewing something that needs to be explored as a more common practice. Would you leave previous score or add a new one for Metacritic? Well, the first thing is you would have to work with Metacritic in some way.
And that is the real
and that is a big
challenge.
problem.
Yeah. I mean, there was a period when we were doing the 5-point scale where we just couldn't make any headway with them because like they kept translating 3 out of 5 on XPlay's scale to 60%. And we're like, that's not what 3 means on our rating scale.
Yeah, it's like a 70-75.
Yeah, and they wouldn't. Like, no, they're mathematically, that's what that means. And we're like, but that's not what the 3 means when you give something a 3 out of 5 on a 5-point scale. And they just
You're
didn't
like,
care.
this is our scale, not yours. You don't decide what to do with our scale.
And like they were like, well, but mathematically is what it means. So it's going to have to. I'm like, well, then you are incorrectly representing the reviews.
Yeah.
And what they're saying. So your metrics are wrong. But
well, you have the publishers.
Oh my God! It was like we just kicked their dog. Like that phone call ended up with someone hanging up on each other. Like that again. That's why XPlay's reviews were not on Metacritic for the last few years
because the publishers get mad. They're like, wait a minute, a 3 out of 5, that's not really a 60, is it?
No.
And then they call me, and I'm like,
Metacritic
no, to us, it's not a 60.
And we're like, you're literally like if you had not been rating 3s out of 5s as 60s, Obsidian might have gotten their bonus for New Vegas. Yeah. And they didn't care.
Right.
They did not
matters.
care.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to have to call it there. That's GameFace 360 in the books. We'll be back next week. We'll be reviewing Assassin's Creed Mirage, among other games. This month is going to be awesome, so I hope we can find you guys back here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/SiftedGames. It would be great if you could help us out financially. The month just turned over, which is always a grim day for me because that just means we just lost another 10 or 15 patrons, which just happened again today. So if you can see it in your heart to help us, that would be really awesome. We could really use it. Head to patreon.com/sifted. That's SIFTD. You can pledge $1, $100 a month, whatever you want, whatever you can afford. But if you just pledge $4 a month, you get all our content early. You get GameFace 4 days early. You get Pactor Factor a week early. You get all our other content at least 3 days early. And again, we are probably the cheapest gaming Patreon of the major gaming Patreons. And we do appreciate that. If you don't have any money, there's still a bunch of stuff you can do to help us. You can review the game on the podcast service that you listen to the show. I said review the game. You can review the show on whatever podcast service you listen to the show on. It makes a big difference for the metrics. When somebody searches video games in the podcast services, the ones that pop up are the ones with the most reviews and the ones with the most recent reviews. Most of the reviews for our show are like 5 years old, 8 years old. If you could do that, that'd be great. That's a great way to help us without any money. Or you can help us financially if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber. There's this thing called Twitch Prime where you can subscribe to our Twitch channel if you're a subscriber to Twitch Prime or of Amazon Prime for free. And that gives us a free $2.50 per month. But you do have to re-up it every month. I hear you. It sucks. It's lame. I put in a ticket at Twitch like 4 or 5 years ago asking for the feature to let it auto-renew, and I get alerts every like 3 days from somebody else who is like, yeah, what the hell? Like, why can't I just say I want to give this channel my sub and just let it keep happening every month? Unfortunately, Twitch won't change its policies, so you have to go and do it every month, and we would really, really appreciate it. That money makes a big difference for us. So I think that's it. Congratulations to Erebus Jones for winning Name That Game. Thanks to everyone for playing. Thanks for everybody who showed up in chat today. As always, you guys make the show much better. You fact check us in real time so we don't have to come back next week and be like, we got this wrong and we got that wrong, like a lot of podcasts do. You guys are awesome. So, you ready for Assassin's Creed Mirage, Matt? Are you excited for it?
I don't know if excited's
No?
the word. I'm interested.
Yeah, I'm excited for
I'm
it.
curious. I haven't played an actual Assassin's Creed game in a long time, you know?
Yeah. And it's been rough for me because I've had the code, but I've had to play this other stuff for the show today, so I can finally really dive in when I get home from the show today. I'm really excited for it.
It's the first, like, traditional Assassin's Creed since, what? Syndicate?
I mean, you would call Syndicate traditional?
I mean, it's the same formula, running around an open map, doing the kind of
guess.
standard thing. You know, it was after. I mean,
It felt like it had already jumped the shark and moved on at that point.
that was how it played the way.
I felt like the third one was the last, like, OG Assassin's Creed.
No, they're all OG until Origins.
Interesting.
When they changed to being giant open world action RPGs.
Yeah. I felt like that stuff was already creeping in there at that point, though.
They'd always had some sort of like upgrade system and like level up system, but like the Assassin's Creed was the same thing all the way up to Syndicate. Certainly Unity was very. You go back and play Unity. Unity is very traditional Assassin's Creed.
That was open world, though.
It was an open city.
Yeah.
It was an open world.
I mean, there was loading?
You couldn't. Well, I mean, you couldn't leave. They've always been that. There's never loading in Assassin's Creed.
But that's an open world when there's no loading.
Right, but it's an open city. It's not a world, really. It's
Well,
like,
we're never going to have an open world.
Right, but you're just in Paris. You don't leave the
just
city.
a phrase.
What I mean is, it's just a city. You don't leave the city.
Forget it. Forget I asked.
There were 3 cities in a whole countryside in Assassin's Creed 1. Unity was a much smaller production, but it still played exactly like that same. Use the eagle vision, use the location. This is all glitchy because we're in a simulation. Ha ha ha. That kind of thing.
I'm excited for it. I can't wait to play it. I hope you guys are excited to hear about it in next week's show. I hope you guys have a great week full of awesome games, and we'll see you next Tuesday. GameFace is up and out.